a little bit of some introduction in the chat so that we get to know who we are, who is represented here. So that when I'm giving examples, I know, what sort of examples to give. I know I'm seeing people who have also been here before and who have just come to also just refresh their memories. And also you might end up picking one or two new things about scientific writing and communication. We are always learning. And as already said, I am Dr. Nicholas Outa. My background is actually in fisheries and aquaculture. So I finished my PhD last year and my research focused on aquaponics. So I was looking at, basically it's a climate smart food system where you produce fish, but then the waste from the fish is also now used as nutrients for plants. So that's basically what I was doing. So I was looking at the nutrient and water use efficiency of that system and also productivity. So how much of fish do I get from every drop of water that I use, or how much of vegetable do I get from every drop of water that I use, and how effective is the system in terms of nutrient use and water use efficiency. So basically, that's what I was looking at. Beyond that, I am also a research capacity advisor at TCC Africa, and I have been training for TCC Africa since 2019. I joined as a trainee. Then I became a trainer. Now I train also. I train, support, empower, and also mentor scholars in all aspects of scientific writing and communication. But I also learn a lot from the people I mentor, from the people I train. And that's why, as Kevina was introducing, she said, this has to be as interactive as possible, because I also want to pick some lessons from, and lessons and tips that I can take to my next training. For me, that is the most... can you hear me clearly? Janet says the sound is vibrating. I don't know whether it's vibrating for everyone or...
It is okay. It is okay.
Okay. So thank you. So basically, as I said, I really want also to learn from... I keep learning a lot from such workshops. So and again, I'm not here to lecture you. I'm not even here to teach you how to write a proposal. I'm here to guide the discussion, because I know we have different levels of experiences, and we have experienced this, and we have interacted with proposals at different levels. I doubt if there's anyone who has never written a proposal and they're here. So it's just about some tips that have worked and some tips that can help you also help others, because I know there are people who are dealing with students, they are guiding them through. There are people who are now at the point of starting to write their master's or PhD proposals, and they really want to see where do I start from. So I think we are a mix of so many people. So I will do a presentation, because I have, at least, even if I'm guiding the conversation, it has to be guided by certain things. Otherwise, we might end up just talking about everything, and we end up going off topic. So I have a short presentation that will guide us. But within that, we are supposed also to give, I can't pretend to have all the answers to all the questions we have. So that's why we are all here to, just share our experiences and the knowledge that we have. So having said that, I will get into the training, and I will now also switch off my video, so that I just wanted you to put a face to that voice, so that as I train, you know who is behind, the face behind the voice. Sometimes it's important. So I think one thing that I have seen, and one thing that I have experienced with so many scholars is when they want to start writing their proposal, they call me and say, hey, Nicholas, if they're students at the university where I work, they come and tell me, I want you to help me get a research topic or a research title. So help me come up with a research topic, or help me come up with a research idea. Research topic, basically that's what they say. Research title or research topic. I'm looking for a research topic. Now, that is the most difficult way of approaching research. Because if you want to look for a research topic, it means you are looking for a set of words that should be able to describe what you want to do. But why don't you start by describing what you want to do before you look for that set of words? Because then if you might end up being stuck forever. When you start saying, okay, I'm looking for a research title, or I'm looking for a research topic, it's going to be very difficult for you to make headway. So the easiest way, and the only way I always tell them, is think of this in terms of concepts. So that is where we start from. We start from conceptualization. We have to conceptualize this idea. So conceptualizing this idea makes it very easy for you to even narrate to someone, so that they can now help you come up with a title. Because if you've not conceptualized this, it's very difficult for somebody to even help you, because they start by telling you, okay, I wanted to help me get a research title. Then you start asking them, what is your field of research? Then they say, okay, I'm in the field of clinical medicine. Then you start asking them, what is that thing that interests you in clinical medicine? Because you've interacted with patients, you've interacted with drugs, you've interacted with certain procedures within that field. What is it that interests you? And he says, it's about pain management. Okay, pain management in a specific area. And they say, I've seen a lot of cancer patients really struggling with pain, and I think it's one thing that really interests me. Then you ask them, what aspect of pain management is it that interests you more? Then they say, okay, maybe home care, because these days we sometimes treat these cancer patients and then we say, okay, you can go home, and then we can train you on how then you can manage, or we can train the caregivers on how to help you manage the pain. Okay, then you tell them, okay, so is it something that is still not known? They say, it's pretty new, so there's quite a lot that is still not, we don't know how these people do the actual management at home. We don't know how effective it is, because when they come back, sometimes we don't ask them, or they come back only when they are in pain, and sometimes it's difficult to talk to them when they are here. So then you ask them, okay, is this something you are interested in knowing? They say, yeah. What specific aspects? Then you say, okay, they say, okay, maybe the level of adherence to some of these, the attitude that they have towards this pain management and all these things. And you see, we already are having a conversation. We have moved away from the topic, because then, you see now, slowly by slowly, we are getting to understand, okay, this is what is interesting to this person. This is what they think is still not known. This is all those things. So whenever somebody wants to think about a researchable idea, the most important thing I always tell them, think of it in terms of concepts instead of a title. Because once you get the concepts together, then finding the title is going to be very easy. Okay, so I'm already eating into my presentation, but I think I always want to start with this, so that because I know they are scholars here, and they are researchers, and they are also trainers, and university dons here who are also guiding other students. And this is something you meet all the time. They keep telling you, okay, Dr. So I want you to help me get a research topic. No, tell them, let's talk about what idea do you want to, what is that idea that is interesting to you within your field? Because within your field, if you are up to date, then you always get to know what is that thing that is trending, or what is that thing that is really the new thing. You also don't want to do research in an area that interests nobody, so no one really will be enthusiastic about what you are studying. So let's think of conceptualizing this idea before we talk about the topic. I'm just moving us away from that, so that anytime somebody comes to you asking you to help them get a research idea, a research topic, tell them we are not talking about a topic here, because then you are trying to look for a certain set of words to describe what you want to do. So instead of looking for that word, let us conceptualize this idea, so that when we look for words to describe it, we are clear about what we are describing. Okay? Give me a thumbs up if that was something that you will take home and practice, even for yourself. So if you are here and you are stuck trying to look for a research topic, I'm just telling you to move away from looking for that research topic and start conceptualizing your idea. And we'll talk about how to conceptualize this idea. And even before I go there, the most important thing is just what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How will you do it? And so what? Very simple. So answer those questions. Start by answering those questions in a way that is simple, in a way that makes sense to you. It is very painful to go to a professor and tell them that you want to do research. I'm through with the coursework, professor. Now I'm thinking of what to do. The professor is going to throw you off, because then he will try to box you into doing what he has always desired to do, but he has either never had time or resources to accomplish it. So you start telling you, what about this? What about this? Then you are now confused, because you don't know. Then you might end up doing something that is not interesting to you, but maybe just interesting to them. Okay? So if you go to a professor or your mentor with an idea that you already have, you might not have all the answers to it, but already you have something in your head. So you walk in and say, okay, prof, I'm so interested in doing something about the use of black soldier fly in the formulation of pig feed, or in the formation of fish feed. Then that's interesting. Okay. Why is it that this is interesting to you? So you're already having a conversation. That is what I want us to move away from the topic idea from today going forward. If anybody comes to you, tell them, describe to me what you want to do, because it is only from there that we can talk about the topic. Let's just move me away from the topic for the moment. You are going to box me into a corner. You are boxing yourself into a corner that you never escape. Start asking them questions within their field. What is interesting? What is trending? What is it that you think is still not known? What do you think you can study about this? And what specific aspect of that thing you want to study that you think you want to understand? With that background, I want to get into my presentation. And most of it will just revolve around what I've talked about. So I have pretty much summarized. I've seen someone in clinical pharmacy. I keep telling you people that I am a prophet, not of doom, but I knew there would be a clinician or somebody in the clinical pharmacy or clinical medicine here. I have seen one. Anyway, to my presentation, as I said, it's a short presentation just to guide us, just to guide the discussion, because I said without something guiding us, we might end up spiraling, because the issues around scientific writing are so many. Without anything guiding us, we might end up spiraling this conversation into things that will be very difficult to, so we have to have something that keeps us within the confines of the discussion. And again, as I said, I'm not here to offer a lecture. So we will go step by step. It's not a very long presentation, but at the end of the day, for me, it's just about the most basic things. The actual writing, sometimes it's not very difficult, especially with the tools that we will even show you tomorrow. Writing should no longer be painful. But then if you don't have these basics, because then even if you're going to write using a tool or you're going to write using whatever it is, even if you're using AI, I know people are using it. But then this idea has to have been conceptualized very clearly in your head, because AI will write all these things for you, but at the end of the day, you are going to stand in front of these professors. And my friend, you don't want to go there if you're not prepared. You don't want to go. You will just cry. Yeah, I remember there's a time a friend, not a friend, but someone was presenting at the school level. And they had not really thought through this idea. I don't know whether there are these people who will say, okay, can you write for me and all those things. I don't know how they do it. But then this person was asked a question by a professor, a very simple question. And it was it boiled down to the conceptualization of this idea. Because then they were asked, why is it that this is something you want to study? And they said, I have been thinking and I've been reading, and then I realized no one has studied this. But then they said, yeah, but there's a lot of information out there on pain management. There's a lot. There's just more than enough. You can't tell me that pain management has not been studied. But you see, so it was very embarrassing. That conversation was very embarrassing because it went on, and this person clearly did not even know why they chose to do that specific aspect of pain management. So it's really interesting when you want a topic, because then you might run up to somebody, they just describe a topic for you, write those words, and then you sit down and start writing, and maybe you are using AI, because so many people are using it these days. I really don't want to lie that people are not using AI. People are using it at different levels, of course. So it's only that some people don't. It's very difficult for people to now come and tell you that yes, I'm using AI. But the truth is, you need to conceptualize this idea, even if you are going to use AI. That's not a problem. It's up to you to decide how then responsibly you can use some of these tools. So, as we said. What is it that you consider when you want to start writing a proposal? So there are several things. So maybe your subject, favorite subject or study, academic interest, whatever it is that is now trending in your field that can pique the interest of other researchers, because you also don't want to do something that has been overstudied or something that is too basic for a PhD or for a master's or those things. So those are some of the things. These are just the normal things. But we need to know that we need to do research before we research. So I need to research before I research. So it means that you need to read widely within your field so that you are able to understand where the knowledge gaps are. Otherwise, and also, when you have knowledge, when you support these knowledge gaps with data or with literature, then it makes a lot of sense. If you go to a professor and tell them that I know that this has been done, I know this has been done, I know this has been done, but from my reading, I think this specific aspect is a unique one that is still missing, and I think that is why I really want to go ahead and study it. Then it makes a lot of sense to the professor, because now they know that you understand whatever it is that you are trying to study. But if you go to them and then they will ask you, do you know what is already out there? Then you say, no, professor, I'm not really sure. No. So you need to do your research, so that if they ask you, have you read the works done by so-and-so? Then tell them, yeah, I've read it. I've read through the works done by so-and-so, but their research was focusing on this, and the results they got were this and that. have you read something done by this other person? So, yeah, I've gone through their work. Maybe the methodology they used was quite different. So I'm trying this other new methodology just to see, so do your research before you settle on the research that it is that you want to do. So here we are talking about the types of knowledge gaps that are there, because one of the things is you'll always be asked about the knowledge gap, and there are several of them. Here we just highlighted conceptual gap, contextual gap, there's the theoretical gap, empirical gap, interdisciplinary gap, and all these things. So those are things when we share these notes, you can also just go through and see what kind of knowledge gaps are there. But then sometimes the knowledge gap could just be, depending on a specific context. So maybe there is, maybe a research was done, but it was done in a metropolitan kind of environment. But then you want to now do it in a rural setting. That could be that can pretty much also be a strong one. You could easily say, okay, there are several cultural aspects of research or cultural aspects of marriage that would play out very differently when I do this in a completely rural setup compared to the other studies that I've seen that have always been done either in towns or cities. So it will be interesting for me to understand how culture level of income in rural settings could play out, those things. So these are some of the things, methodological gaps where you think research methods that have been used before either now feel are outdated, or you think there's a new method you want to try out just to understand how then that method could give you either different results, or if it can give you same results, or if we can do the work even better or in a more effective way compared to whatever is already out there. So sometimes also theoretical gaps. So when you think there is no comprehensive framework to explain a phenomena, so you realize, okay, we are basing all these arguments on theories that maybe a research has always been done based on a certain theory. I think for those who are especially in the how do you call it? In the social sciences, sometimes most of the time when you are doing even literature review, you do the empirical literature review and theoretical literature review. So during the theoretical literature review, you realize that this kind of study that I'm doing have always been done based on a specific theory. What is it that I can develop a new theory, or what is it that what would happen if I do my research but underpin it using a different theory or theoretical framework? You try these things out. You would say, okay, the research has always been done, but it has always been informed by this one theory. Why don't we do this study but try different theoretical frameworks and see if we get different results or the same results? And also where there is an empirical gap is like where there is no data, or the data that is there needs updating. You find, like in Lake Victoria, for example, sometimes you find that, let's say somebody did something on the feeding behavior of Nile tilapia or Nile perch on a specific, maybe in Winam Gulf as an example. And then you realize Winam Gulf has undergone a lot of ecological changes over the 10 years. So you realize, you say, okay, the last study that was done on this fish that was published like 20 years ago. But as it is right now, a lot has happened in Lake Victoria over the last 20 years. So it will be important for me now to update this information, or there's no information completely about this fish. So it would be nice for me to go out there and look for my master's degree, for example. My research was on the feeding and reproductive behavior of Nile tilapia in Lake Naivasha. I know that people have done a lot of these fish. People have understood this fish a lot in other systems, but the fish was just introduced in Lake Naivasha, and it was already there for 7 years. No one had studied the behavior and reproduction and feeding of that fish in that lake since the introduction. So I had a very good argument that I also want to understand if the feeding behavior and reproductive behavior is the same in Lake Naivasha as it is in the other areas where people have studied and published, and even those things. So these are some of the areas where you can check. So that one just to explain, so that why is it not moving? Okay. So here we are talking about how to select a research idea for your PhD proposal. You see, now we are not talking about I've not said about how to select a research title. Yeah, as I said, I really always want to move away from the title will come. Ultimately, you have to do your research under a specific title. But at the beginning, let's talk about research idea. Okay, so consider interest, so align research with your personal interest to ensure motivation and engagement. That's why I was telling you, you could go to a professor and then the professor aligns you to their own interest, not your interest. So they align you to an interest of theirs. So this professor has been thinking about a specific, maybe the field of physics. So they have been thinking about a specific polymer or chemistry, for example. They have been thinking about a specific polymer and trying to test its strength and all these things, but they have never gotten the time, or they have never found a student who can do this for them in the lab. And then now here you come without an idea completely, and you're at the mercy of the professor. That's what they will tell you. They will easily tell you, okay, okay, this is what you want to do. Okay, that's nice. Let me think about it. Then they will now, they will just pull that idea from somewhere and give it to you. If that is not of your interest, there will be no motivation. So you end up doing something you are not interested in. Now, this sometimes happens when you are funded by a project, for example, and then this project is going to pay for your fees, for example, and give you money for research. You must align to the objectives of this project now. So you wanted to do something on Nile perch, as an example, but then the project is only talking about Nile tilapia, not Nile perch, or the African catfish. So then they tell you that, okay, we know you are interested in Nile perch, but then if you are in this project, Nile perch is not part of what we are going to cover. So the fish of our fish of interest is Nile tilapia. So you will have to do that. So I'm just giving you scenarios under which sometimes you do research that is not aligned to your interests, and then you end up not being so motivated. Then the next thing is brainstorm ideas. So generate a wide range of potential research topics to explore. So brainstorming ideas helps you so that you can answer the questions of where, what, all those things. So during brainstorming session, and I always tell people, when you are brainstorming, even as a group, throw in all the ideas into that box. You will select them later, and you distill them later. An idea comes into your head and you don't want to put it down. You say, okay, I think no. So the best thing during brainstorming, put everything into that basket and then think about how now to filter them later on. So when you are brainstorming with someone, let's say you are brainstorming with your student or someone you're working with, and then they throw in an idea and you think it's about a bit outlandish, don't throw it out immediately. Just put it at the back of your head that I think, this one, when we are now distilling, this one has to go. But don't throw it out immediately. What happens in that case is, if you are brainstorming as a team, and I throw in 2 ideas and you throw them out, you will lock me out. I will just, I will be afraid to give out my ideas. The best thing would be, if you are a team leader, would be just to say, okay, just put it down. Let's put it down. We'll discuss it later. You know already that it's, then you find a way of distilling it out. But if we are brainstorming, during brainstorming session, even with yourself, don't always try to resist the urge of throwing out ideas even before it gets into the basket. Okay. Then also align with the trends. So choose a topic that addresses current trends in the field in your field for relevance. In my field of fisheries and aquaculture, for example, now we are moving into eDNA, that is for capture fisheries, that is fish in the lake. But then in aquaculture right now, the most painful thing in aquaculture right now is fish feeds. We are over relying on fish meal to produce fish feed. So everyone is now, if you start talking to them about alternative sources of protein for fish feed formulation, that will really be interesting to an aquaculture scientist. So when you are talking about azolla, the use of spirulina, the use of BSF, that is black soldier fly or earthworms or all these things, so think about something that is trending in your field. You really also don't want to do something that no one is interested in. They will tell you, talking about the growth performance of a specific fish that has been done over and over. There's nothing new you're talking about. So think about that. And also ensure feasibility. You don't want to think of an idea that will not be achieved with the resources and the time you have. Okay, time is a resource, but with the resources you have, you don't want to buy it too big that, that chunk is just going to choke you. So I think that is one thing that we also need to think about. We have not started writing our proposal. We are still just building the story. I think we've talked about all this. We've also talked a little bit about this. So these are things we will come back to, but I was just drawing them into this so that it's easier for us to see all of them in one place. Basically, it's just what we have talked about. So key reasons for proposal success. So mostly they look at the research problem, which is the most important thing. If you cannot show me your problem, or if you cannot show me the problem you are solving, or you cannot show me where the problem is, then it will be very difficult for me to allow you to go ahead with your research, because I'll tell you this problem is not clear. So I don't know what you are doing. I don't understand what you are solving. So because it's not clear to me, okay? Then the objectives that, of course, will draw from the problems, the theoretical framework, especially for those who are this is most relevant for the social scientists. So we need to see the theories and models that underpin the research. So we want to see upon which theories is this research. So you have to, when you are doing your theoretical literature review, you review different theories, 3 or 4 theories, and then you tell us, I understand theory A, theory B, theory C are related to this research, but my research is underpinned by this specific theory. So you could, sometimes you find people have 2 theories informing their work. So these are the things. Then methodology must be very clear. You must describe how you are going to do your work in a way that makes it easier for me to replicate your work if I have the same resources, I'm doing research in the same kind of setting. Target population, for example, expected outcomes, research timelines, the budget, challenges and limitations, and dissemination plans. These are things you also have to think in your mind. But then we are planning. So when planning and writing a proposal, what are the critical steps? I will not spend too much time in certain areas, especially areas where I already covered in the long introduction that I started with. So step 1 is knowing and analyzing the problem. We've talked about this. This is achieved by analyzing the prevailing situation. We've talked about this. So within the field of aquaculture, for example, or within the field of clinical medicine, or within the field of clinical pharmacy, as an example, there is a specific area of clinical medicine that is interesting to you. And it could be interesting because of whatever you are seeing around you. It could be interesting based on what you are reading, or just your interaction with people. So let's say at your place of work, let's say you are a teacher, a high school teacher, for example, and there's something you've observed among pupils or students that is really interesting to you. So you say, okay, it's about learner performance in mathematics or in this science courses. So you ask yourself, it's learner performance, but what specific aspect of learner performance? So you need to start asking yourself those questions. What specific aspect? Then you get to that aspect and say, now the broader thing is education. Within education, you're talking about learner performance. Within learner performance, you're talking about a specific thing. So you boil it down to the exact thing, okay? Now, this enables you formulate a statement of the problem. And most of the time, for the statement of the problem, we use a problem tree. So when you are writing a good statement of the problem, we want you to use what we call the problem tree, where the roots, we always talk about the root causes. So you have a problem in the middle. What is causing this problem? So those are the roots. And then what are the consequences, which are the leaves and the branches, the upper part of the tree. So this is a problem tree helps you really map out the problem very easily. And I think this is an example of a problem tree. So in the middle, the core problem in the middle of the tree, of the problem tree, is that teenagers don't finish school. It's that simple. That is the problem I'm dealing with. But then what is causing this? So sometimes it's good to map it out like this. And this is also very important for you who is going to deal with students. Sometimes it's just the easiest way is to draw for them this problem tree so that you think together. You tell them, okay, what is the problem? And you say, the high cost of fish feeds. Okay, what is the problem? Okay. Why are fish feeds expensive? Then you start saying, they will tell you, they're expensive, one, because we rely on fish meal as a protein. Okay, how is that a problem? It's a problem because it's unreliable sometimes. It's also, depleting the very resources in the wild, in the lakes that we are trying to protect by adopting aquaculture. So actually, we are robbing Paul to pay Peter because we are using fish to formulate fish feeds. Okay. How is that a problem? So we start digging deeper into the roots of this problem. And then you say, okay, now what are the consequences of this fish feed being too expensive? Then they start saying, okay, now farmers don't get their profit. Their profit is lowered. Some of them now end up feeding fish on diets that are not properly formulated because they want to cut down on the cost. Then this can now kill fish or maybe lead to stunted growth, and some of these aquaculture farms end up either collapsing or producing fish of low quality. And how is that a problem? accessing market, like international market, for example, or export market is becoming a problem because of quality. Okay. Then how is that? So you keep asking the consequences and the root causes until you get to a point where you cannot explain anymore. Then you can now start writing. Okay, this is another example here. I'm not going to go through that. Now, so when we talk about concept mapping, basically it's what I have been talking about all through. So from the main idea or concept or problem, you branch out to show how that main idea can be broken down into specific topics. Okay, so let's say you want to talk about climate change. I have seen students coming to me and tell me, I want to do a research on the impacts of climate change on fish reproduction in Lake Victoria. Or I want to do a research on the impact of climate change on crop productivity in Kakamega County. They're very confident. Then you ask them, climate change is such a big thing that I don't understand how you're going to look at the impacts of climate change. So what specific aspect of climate change are you talking about? Then they break down all the aspects of climate change. And then you tell them, don't you think we can now talk about the rainfall patterns rather than climate change as a whole? But the grand scheme of things is about an aspect of climate change and how then this influences crop productivity and then how this influences nutrition, or if you want to take the economic way. Then you realize now, with that guidance and with that backdrop, it's very easy for them now to figure out whatever it is that they want to study. So that's why I keep telling you, I know there are researchers here who are dealing with students, who are dealing with the mentees. The best thing is to think about asking them to talk about these concepts instead of thinking about the topic. And that is what I will keep stressing out throughout this presentation. I will keep visiting that because that is very important for you. I know people these days will say, okay, I have a tool that I can just, but then you have to conceptualize. You have to map out your idea. The concept must be mapped out. There's no shortcut about it because that is the only way you are able to understand, present to professors, answer the questions, and interact with them meaningfully. Okay? Now, when you are mapping out your problems, there's questions I've talked about that you need to answer. So what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Where will you do it? Who will be part of it? How will you do it? And then the last question is always, so what? So I think, yeah. So I will just talk about it in this one here. So we start with what you want to do. So because these are the things I want you to be asking, because then most people sometimes either come. Have you seen people who come for advice, but then they have decided whatever it is that they want to do? So they will come and tell you, I'm struggling with this and that. And then you tell them, okay, I think the most important thing, the best thing for you is to stop taking alcohol for the moment, especially when you're still under this kind of pressure so that you can clear your head out. And then they go ahead and drink alcohol. And then they are still in that problem. And you ask, why did you even come to me? So sometimes people come, they already know what they want to do. So a researcher comes to you and tells you, okay, I want to do something let's say on pain management, just as I said. And then they know the what. So that is what they want to do. But then the next question is, why do you want to do it? Okay? So why? Why, most of the times, is the problem of the statement and also the justification and the significance of your study. So ask this student, why do you want to study this? Then they will tell you, okay, there's not a lot that has been studied. Most of the studies I'm seeing are talking about this. Okay. So the why is, why do you want to do it? So it means the knowledge gap and also the justification. Why is it justifiable for you to do this work? And also, of what significance will this work be? And then there's, how will you do it? So sometimes when you're answering these questions at the beginning, don't complicate things. If you say, how do you want to do it? Don't go into the details of the research methodology. Just say, I will do this by administering questionnaires and also talking to key informants and also doing some FGDs in the field. Okay. So you want to do some qualitative and quantitative data collection. That's nice. Then you ask them where. Well, I want to do this in Lake Victoria, or I want to do this in Kakamega County. And also that where has also to be justified. Where is very important to justify. So why did you select Kakamega County and not Narok County, for example? Then they will tell you, okay, I selected Kakamega County because it's an area I'm conversant with, or it's because that most of the farmers of this crop that I'm talking about come mostly from Kakamega. They will justify. And then the other one is about so what. So at the end of the day, it's about, you've done this research, so what? Of what importance is it? How is it going to change? How is it going to influence policy? How is it going to influence research? How is it going to influence practice within the field? So ask them these tough questions, because then, even if you're the supervisor, when they stand in front of these professors, at least they will know that, okay, there's a lot of thinking that went into this concept. You don't want to leave your student vulnerable. The only way to help them overcome this vulnerability, even if they're going to use tools. I always not dictate to people, if you want to write using AI, that is your problem. If your university accepts, I'm not going to tell you to write using AI. I'm just going to show you whatever tools are there. It's up to you to use it responsibly without replacing you as a researcher. It's an assistant. It's not supposed to be a replacement. But then, even if they're going to use those tools, the concept has to be mapped out, okay? The concept has to be mapped out, because if it is not mapped out, this student will not be grounded. The student will not be grounded. So even if you are here and you are a student, try to map out and start by answering these questions. I want you to go down. I know maybe you are already thinking of doing that. The thing I want you to do after the training today, go and write them down. What do I want to do? Put it in a very simple way. I want to do a research on the impact of this. Okay, now I want to study this. Why do I want to do it? I want to do it because a lot of studies are focused on this, or there's this aspect of pain management that is not understood, and especially with regard to cancer patients. How will this help? This will help. So you just try to write that story down in a way that makes sense to you. Let it make sense to you first. Now, in a very simple and plain language, write out what you want to do, make it as clear as possible, first to yourself, okay? And then to other people. Now, step 2 is you need to identify the funding source, and especially if you are dealing with funded research. So sometimes you are writing proposal for funding, or you are just writing your research for PhD or masters, because then the funding source will sometimes help you figure out how much you can buy it. You don't want to design a study that would require 7 million shillings to accomplish, but you only can afford 500,000 shillings. So this is also very important. But then, if you're doing proposal for funding, sometimes it's about thinking about how can you help these funders rather than how they can help you. If you're going to be part of a project, when you're writing a proposal, look through the objectives and see, in the process of trying to get your PhD, in the process of trying to collect your data for your master's thesis, how is this going to answer the objectives of the project? Because then that is how you are going to help them. Most of us write these proposals thinking of how those people are going to help me achieve my goals, or how they are going to help me collect data. Sometimes when they are reviewing it, they are also going to look at how you are also going to help them answer the objectives of the project. So think about this. Now, why is it important for us to write proposals? We are going to do the actual writing. Don't worry. This is just building up the story. And even when we get to writing, it will now be very easy, because we shall have built the story to the point of writing. It helps us to clarify our ideas, because if I allow you, just go to the field. That's why universities want you to write proposals, go through the defenses, the presentations at the school, at the department, at the school, at the graduate school, all those, so that they are sure that when you're going out there, you're going to collect data that can be written into, a coherent story. They don't want to allow you just go to the field and collect data. Then you come back and then they realize you have data that is collected that is insufficient, or you have data that does not make any sense at all those things, or you have insufficient data, or you've used methods that do not make sense at all. So they want to be sure, and that's what the proposal helps you with. Clarify your ideas, you start planning, you develop good writing habits, because then when you're writing your proposal, you already started writing certain parts of your thesis already. And also to communicate your proposed research to get advice. So sometimes when you are writing proposal, that is the only way you can be advised. Otherwise, when you bring to me an idea and you just narrate it by word of mouth, I don't know how to help you, because the ideas are not structured. Okay, so basically these are some of the things I've talked about the other side, basically just summarized in a different way. Okay. So what do readers look for? So let's say when I'm given a proposal to review, maybe as an expert or as a lecturer, as an example. So one is I will look at the significance of your proposal, the feasibility. You are telling me that you want to administer questionnaires and you're going to interview 1,000 people, but then you want to do it in one day. So this will start bringing ideas. I will start thinking, okay, this guy does not even know what they want to do because they're telling me that they want to do all this in one day. So these are the things we start looking at, okay? So while assessing or reading the proposal, the reader asks a series of questions that your proposal must provide answers to, okay? So what are those questions before we get to the actual writing? So we ask a lot of questions. I'm not going to say all of them. So one of them is the clarity of objectives. So are the objectives clear? Are they well defined? If they are research questions or objectives, the clarity is very important. When you're talking about specific objectives, they have to be measurable. They have to be smart, so to speak. Contribution to knowledge, I want to look at, to what extent does this proposal, will this proposal contribute to knowledge? If it's not going to bring in new knowledge, it's not going to build any new ideas, then it's like, okay, you are doing what every other person has done. There's a lot of data already. There's very little that we don't know. So we already know everything. So what is it that you are bringing in? Then methodology, I will also look at, and most of the important things is reproducibility. That is a problem that we are struggling with in research right now. People do research that cannot be reproduced. So even if replicability and reproducibility is very important. So that's also some of the things I look at. Did you use the appropriate methods? Did you use the appropriate materials, and did you describe them in a way that if somebody gets the same resources that you have and are doing research in the same setting, will they be able to reproduce your work? They might not get the exact results as yours, but then are they able to, just based on your methodology alone, do what you did? Risk management, look at the risks. Did you identify them? And also timelines, literature review. Did you do a good literature review? If it is for a requirement of a degree, then the proposal you are writing or the kind of study you are doing, is it possible for that kind of study to give you a PhD or a master's? I will look at it. If it is too little, then I will say, okay, whatever it is that you want to study for PhD, I think that's too little. So this proposal, throw it out. Okay. So there are several other things, and also the research skills. So you want to do something on gene manipulation or gene editing, but then you are just somebody who did something, just a normal aquaculture scientist like myself. So I cannot do gene editing and all those gene mapping, and I unless I get some thorough training. So if a professor sees me writing that I want to edit the gene, the genes of a specific fish, then they will ask me a lot of questions. Do you have the skills required? So if I convince them that among the people I'm going to work with as my supervisors, maybe has that skill and are going to train me, they're going to help me achieve that, then that's possible. But if I don't convince them, then they'll be like, okay, you want to write a proposal, yes, but then you don't have the capacity to achieve it. Okay. So these are the things. Then several other questions. So I'm not going to read through them. Those are just some of the things that I've talked about. How then do we craft an effective proposal? I think we've talked about all these things. Okay. Adhere to guidelines. Your university will give you guidelines. Adhere to those guidelines. If the spacing is 1 and 1.5, if the font type is Times New Roman, if you're supposed to submit a proposal, especially for funding, if it's not an academic proposal, and the deadlines, just adhere to whatever it is. You could have a very good idea, but if you don't adhere to certain guidelines, then they will just throw this idea out. They will say, okay, this person did not format the proposal the way we wanted, or they submitted it past the deadline because they did, all those things, okay? So seek feedback. There's what we call passion and enthusiasm. We talked about this when we were talking about aligning with your interests. So those are some of the things that. So I think we have now gone past the introductory part, and I think that for me was the most important thing, because the other parts of writing, they are also very important. They are just as important as the other things, but then conceptualizing this idea will give you what to write. Because if you don't have this idea figured out, you could be very good at writing, but what are you going to write anyway? What will you be writing? So it's very important that you take your time to think through this idea development thing, so that when you are writing now, you have something to write about, and also writing about something that you can easily defend, and you can hold a conversation around. Okay, that is very important to me. But then when we are going to discuss this proposal writing things, I know sometimes we'll get to a point where we'll say, okay, this one should come after the abstract, or this one should come before the introduction. No, for me, ask the university what what the guidelines are. So if you are told, because there are universities that will tell you want to write the justification and the significance of study. Some universities will tell you choose one. If you want to narrate for us the significance of your study and leave out the justification, there's no problem to that. So just don't say that when you are being trained at TCC Africa, we were told that this is how the proposal should flow. No. Ask the university. They always have guidelines. Ask them, how should my proposal flow? How should I edit it? They will tell you that the first section should contain this, the second section should contain this, chapter 3 should contain this. That is what they will tell you. So follow that. And then now, the most important thing that we are going to do today is telling you what goes into what part. So if it is a statement of the problem, what should go into the statement of the problem, regardless of which part of the proposal it appears. So if they tell you that we want you to write the statement of the problem at the end after the references, for example, don't tell them that is not how it works. If that is what the university requires, put it there. But it's just now about the structuring, where which part appears. But it's not about, as long as you know what goes into what section, I think you should be good to go. Now, here is a summary of the proposal. And I think with this summary, we should be good to go. Yes. So the proposal will have a title. These proposals, depending on the kind of study you are doing, there could be a little bit of some differences here and there, variations, a little bit of variations here and there. But then, by and large, whatever remains are this title. Most of these topics, most of these sections will appear. I know that there are proposals that will have additional sections. There are proposals that will have fewer sections. But what I know is that these sections will appear. So the title should be a concise and descriptive title that captures the essence of the research. Okay, because this is the level of your proposal. So when I see a title that is concise, descriptive, and clear enough, then I already start thinking of, okay, this must be a very good proposal. So don't give me a title that it's not descriptive enough. And I always tell people, try as much as possible to keep it within 20 words. So if you can describe what you are doing in 20 words, then I will say, this is good. So try as much as you can. After the title, always we'll have the abstract, which is a brief summary of the proposal, including the objectives, the methodology, the knowledge gap, a little bit of some introduction also to it so that I get the background. So after the title, we always have an abstract. Then the background of the study. So the introductory part of the research of the proposal, like chapter 1, contains a lot of things. So it is the introduction, basically. So it contains the background of the study. So the background of the study is what sets the stage for your proposal. So this is the launching part. So you are going to give us a little bit of the background. Where did we get to where we are right now? We're talking about pain management in cancer patients, among cancer patients. How did we get here? Give us an idea of what the global characteristics looks like. Give us statistics, for example. Give us, so that we get oriented on the bigger picture before you come down now to talking about home management. So if you are going to do a study on pain management by these people at home, by caregivers, don't just go directly into caregiving and cancer pain management. No, start talking about cancer generally at global stage, so that we get a background, talk about pain in cancer, talk about pain management in cancer, then now bring it down to home management, those ones. So that background now contains the introductory part of your proposal will contain other parts, but then it has the background of the study, it has the justification, it has the statement of the problem, the significance. So it has basically whatever we need to know before we now get into how then you will do your work. So the introduction, the literature review section mostly sometimes follows after the introductory part of your research. So this is where we review existing research to establish a theoretical framework. So literature review, depending on the kind of study you do, sometimes you only need to do empirical literature review. So this is just empirical data that is there, people who have conducted research and have published empirical information. Sometimes in certain kind of research, you must do both empirical literature review and theoretical literature review, depending on the kind of work you're doing. Then, of course, we have the research objectives that have to be specific, measurable. That now also helps you guide the methodology, because the objectives, sometimes in some universities, you are told to write your methodology section objective-wise. So you are told objective 1, how are you going to achieve it? Objective 2, how are you going to achieve it? So these objectives should be able to guide you, and that's why they have to be clear enough, very specific, so that you know how then each of them, what data sets do I need for each objective. Then you have your research questions or hypotheses, depending on the kind of study you are doing. So there are studies where you are going to use research questions. There are studies where you are going to use research hypothesis. Then the methodology basically is how you are going to do your work, significance of the study, the timelines, which is the work plan, then the budget and the references. We will come through most of this, if not all. So let's start with the title, for example. So the title is a mini abstract of your investigation. I think I talked about this already. It has to be concise. It has to be very clear. Now, you need to paint a quick picture of the key ideas. And the words should reflect the focus of your proposal. So make sure you put the most important words towards the beginning. So put them first. Put these most important words towards the beginning of your title. If it's about the growth performance of a specific fish, you don't want to start by writing so many other things and then you put growth performance towards the end. When I'm reading your title, I will misjudge the focus of your research. Okay, so if let's say you are talking about growth performance, but then you are also talking about water quality aspects. But the main thing is, I want to see how then water quality influences growth of a certain fish. Then I want to know: are you focusing on water quality and how it influences growth, or are you talking about growth but trying to link it to water quality aspects? So depending on how you are going to write, the example is here, for example. So one of the example of titles here is title 1 is left-handedness in students and its relationship to learning preferences. The second title is learning preferences in students and the connection to left-handedness. Now, if you read through them, you will think they are the same because they're talking about left-handedness and they're also talking about learning preferences. But if you look carefully, you realize that title 1 is talking about left-handedness and how that is related to learning preferences. The second one is the focus is learning preferences. So if you are collecting data and your research is focusing is title 1, it means you are going to look for students who are left-handed and then you are going to ask them about their learning preferences. Okay? If you are doing the second, if your focus is on the second topic, it means you are going to ask students about their learning preferences, and then you are now going ahead to ask, are you left-handed or not? So they might look the same, but whoever is reading your work will look at what really is the focus, and the focus should come towards the beginning. I'm not saying it has to be the first word or the first two words, but it has to come towards the beginning, because then that is what I will look at as the main focus of your research. Okay. Now, in order to develop a clear title, you must be clear about the focus of your research. I can't stress this enough, and this comes from the conceptualization that we were talking about. Okay, I will not read certain text. There are those activities. Those are I will not read, especially the ones I've talked about. Now, then we go to after the title. Of course, now the abstract and all those things will come at the end. But then I want us to talk about the introduction and the background of the study. As I said earlier, the background of the study now provides the necessary background or context for your research problem. Okay, how to frame the research problem perhaps is the biggest problem that most people face in proposal writing. Now, in the background, as I said, I want you to give us the context. You don't just want, let's say you are talking about teenage pregnancy in a certain locality. So let's say teenage pregnancy among school-going girls in, let's say, Ibadan State, or that is Oyo State, in Ibadan sub-location. I don't know how it's called, but I'm just giving an example. So when you are doing that, you can't just go directly and start telling us how teenage pregnancy is becoming a problem in a specific locality. No. Start by defining to us what teenage pregnancy is. Give us some statistics at the international level, at the global level, for example. Don't take too much time there, but I want you to give us a context. So you'll talk about teenage pregnancy, the global trends. You need to give us some statistics, of course, and support that with certain data. And then now talk about that, give us what is happening at the African continental level, give a little bit of what is happening at the continental level, the problems associated with teenage pregnancy, some research that has been done, give us statistics, then come to your specific country. Or you can just come to East Africa as an example, then talk to us about in East Africa, for example, these are the statistics, these are the problems. And you can even throw in, in Uganda, in Tanzania, give us some statistics, and then come to your country and say, in Kenya, for example, teenage pregnancy is what is happening. And then now come to the locality where you are. Now that is where you are going to now tell us the specific problem you're dealing with. Maybe if it is, we are still yet to understand teenage pregnancy in Kenya in a specific setting, using specific methodologies that you are going to use, all that, so that when you come at the end, towards the end of your background, we have understood everything that you want to talk about. You've teased out the gap. You've given us a little bit of a justification of why this study is important. Not into too much detail, because for a proposal, there's a specific section where you are going to write all these things in details. But in the background of the study, as you are giving us the broader context, we want to start understanding why this is important, okay? So you need to provide a brief but appropriate historical background. You need to provide the contemporary context in which your proposed research question occupies the center stage, okay? I think I've talked about that already. So that goes into your background of the study. I think this is just summarizing. Basically what I was talking about. So we need to think about, you need to identify the research gap, because that is what is going to, because the launching part, the background, as we said, is the launching part. So that launching part should be interesting to us, because through that we should be able to see where the gap is. A little bit of historical background, you also need to bring it to the contemporary context. So you need to bring contemporarily, apart from the historical data that you have given us, right now, what is happening, what is known, what is still yet to be known. Then the significance of your study should also come out a little bit. I'm not going to read all that, because then that is what has already been done. The other thing that is also very important, and is also included in the background of your study, in the introductory part of your study that contains this background of the study, is the statement of the problem. I will not talk about this much, because I've talked about it enough. Statement of the problem is telling us what the problem is. When you are stating the problem, don't try to justify why it is important for this research to be done, or why it is important to find solution to these problems, because that is what the justification part of your research is supposed to do. So when you are doing, when you are writing the statement of the problem, I always tell people, just state the problem. Who dies if this research is not done? Or what happens if this research is not done? So the most important thing is just narrate to us the problem. What is the problem? The problem is that farmers are not feeding their fish appropriately. Why are they not feeding their fish appropriately? Because feeds are expensive. Why are feeds expensive? Feeds are expensive because we are relying on fish meal as a protein source. How is that a problem? So narrate the problem. Now, if you're doing research, I want to see two elements in your statement of the problem. One, I want to see the actual problem in the society or in the community or in the industry. I want to see that stated clearly, that this is the problem that farmers are dealing with, or this is the problem that parents are dealing with. Okay, this is the problem that doctors in the field of clinical medicine are dealing with. This is the problem that pain managers are dealing with. That is the first one thing I want to see. I want to see the actual problem in the society or the actual problem in the industry. The second element that I want to see as a problem is the problem in academia. What is it that is still not known? Because academics will always ask you, okay, you've studied very well, but what is it? What is in this for us? Yeah. So the second aspect of the statement of the problem that I want to see, apart from just narrating to us what the actual problem is, I want you to also show me what is still not clear in academia. So the research gap has to be there. So I want you to, when you're narrating a problem, start by narrating the actual problem in the society, and then come down and now start narrating to us the gap. This is not known. This is not known. Research has focused on this, but has neglected this. It is known that this is happening, but then this is not clear why it is happening, or this aspect is still not really fully understood. So that's how before I forget, I want, when I read your objectives, I want to see them highlighted in your statement of the problem. Okay? Because if I don't see them in your statement of the problem, then I will ask you, where did these objectives come from? Where are you picking these objectives from? Because I'm not seeing them in your background anywhere. I'm not seeing them anywhere in your statement of the problem. So I don't understand how they are relevant in your proposal. Okay? So that's one thing I really want you to pick, that when you are writing your statement of the problem, make sure that your objectives, are, these gaps that you are going to fill, of these problems you are trying to solve with the data you are collecting or with the research you are doing, they are a little bit of it is talked about in the statement of the problem. Okay, so I want you, when you are narrating your problem, start thinking of teasing out these research gaps, teasing out these gaps, so that it's clear to me that okay, when I read the objectives, I realize okay, yeah, I now understand why this objective is here, because they had talked about a knowledge gap somewhere, or they had talked about a methodological gap somewhere. They had talked about a conceptual gap somewhere. So I want, in your statement of the problem, when you're writing it, make sure that the objectives can clearly be drawn from the statement of the problem section of your proposal. If I don't see them, then I will keep asking, where are these objectives coming from? Where did you get your objectives from? And then you start saying, then I'll tell you now, but then you didn't narrate them as problems. So why are you trying to solve them if they're not problems? Why are you trying to create trying to solve a problem that you didn't even talk about? So you are trying to collect data. So I will ask you, what problem is your objective one trying to solve? Then if it is in your statement of the problem, you just refer me back to the statement of the problem and tell me that this one is about the knowledge gap on the use of alternative sources of protein. Okay, yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's okay. And if I see another objective that is now talking about water quality, then I will ask you, what objective 2 is talking about water quality parameters? Okay, which problem are you trying to solve with them? Then you say, okay, most farmers do not know how to monitor water quality, so I want to see whether these management practices are affecting water quality, because then that affects the growth of fish ultimately. Then I say, okay, yeah, I saw that you are saying that in management, most farmers do not know how to monitor water quality parameters. Okay, so I'm just giving this example so that you are always conscious that when you are writing your statement of the problem section, make sure that the objectives can be drawn from the problems you have narrated. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the others. I think the context I've given is good enough. So I want to see two things: the actual problem in the society or the actual problem in the industry that people are struggling with, and then I also want to see the knowledge gap, because it is from there that you are going to get your objective. So the way you want to write it, that's your problem, but make sure that those aspects are there and just narrate the problem. Resist the urge to start saying that because of this, there is therefore need for research. The data collected from this will be used to. No, there's a specific section in your proposal where that will be necessary. Okay, so for a proposal, state the problem and stop it there. Then go to the justification part and now justify why those problems need to be solved and how your research is going to help solve those problems. Okay, so basically the implications need to be there. Then all these other things I'm not going to. Then we talk about the objectives. So after your statement of the problem, then as I said, from the statement of the problem, that is where you are going to draw your objectives, because there is where we are going to tell us what is not known and where the problem is. So your research is trying to solve a specific problem. If that problem is not visible in your statement of the problem, then I will not understand why you are trying to solve it. So objectives, I think, is just a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction to investigate the variables. So let's say to determine the impact of this, or to determine the effect of this on that, make it as clear and as simple as possible. Okay. Depending on your research or the kind of research you are doing. So ensure objectives are smart, and then review and revise your objectives. I think we start by defining the research problem, and you see, everything takes us back to the problem. What is the problem? So identify the gap in knowledge or issue to be addressed. Then it is from there that you now establish the research purpose, because then this is the problem, this is the purpose. So articulate the aim of the research in relation to the problem. Then you can now try to create objectives and very specific objectives. So create clear, measurable goals, categorize as primary and secondary, then ensure the objectives are smart. So apply a criteria to ensure objectives are effective and achievable, and then you review and revise. So these objectives, as I said, must come from the statement of the problem. Otherwise, if I cannot see them in your statement, then I'll ask myself why they are there in the first place. Then the hypothesis or research questions, depending on when. So maybe I want somebody to maybe just unmute and tell us, when do we use hypothesis and when do we use research questions? I want to also grab a cup of water just to wet my gills. But even as of that, I want just one person or two people to tell us, when do we use research hypothesis and when do we use research questions? Anybody can unmute and just tell us. I also want to hear your voices. Anybody at all, you can raise your hand or just unmute and tell us, when do we use hypothesis and when do we use research questions?
Can I try?
Please go ahead.
My name is Edith. I think whenever you are applying hypotheses in the research, you're trying to either make a prediction about a relationship between two or more variables. That are within your topic of interest.
And, what about research questions?
Sorry?
I have understood the hypothesis when you are saying, okay, let's try to do a prediction, but based on maybe certain prior knowledge. What about research questions? Yes, Ezra.
Yes, good morning. So I'm thinking hypotheses are used more for statistical kind of research, and then the research questions is more of the, for example, if you're dealing with communities, that's when our research questions can come in.
Yes, I agree. But also, even for when you are doing, even qualitative research or quantitative, depending on the kind of study you are doing, you still can also work with hypothesis. I think as the earlier speaker also said, that mostly when you are comparing, so let's say you want to see a relationship and you predict that there could be a correlation or there could be an influence or there could be a relationship, then you can easily. But then if you are just doing an exploratory study, so you don't know whether you're not comparing effects or you are not comparing variables, you're just going out there and asking what is happening. So just explore, just to see what is happening, and then. Yes, Dr. Jago. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
Yeah, thank you. It's correct. Yeah, I just when it comes, I think the hypothesis, as said by Judith or Edith, it's like really having the idea or some perception which will guide you in the research, either this or these two opinions. But when it comes to the research questions, they guide you in the data collection and in the methodology, even like some, if you're doing questionnaire, if it's a scientific, what is, how will you collect the data from your experiment and some like this. So the specific questions which help in data collection, help in methodology, and help even in prediction the results I submit. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I think that is why sometimes you find one objective could be broken into several research questions, because then that now guides you. What kind of data sets do I need so that I can answer each of these questions appropriately? Yes, Gabriel.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Research question, I think, is most applicable for descriptive statistics, or when your research is more descriptive. And hypothesis is when your research is more inferential. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, yeah, we settle it there so that we also don't spiral into so many other things. Yeah, if you are going to infer and look at correlations, relationships, influence and effects and those ones, but then if you are just going to explore and describe, then you would rather ask yourself questions. So whether it's a research questions or a research hypothesis depends on the kind of study you are going to do. Now, here you say that hypotheses are testable explanations proposed before conducting a project. Both seek to predict relationships. To use hypotheses or questions depend on the purpose of the study, the approach and design of the methodology. So you will look at it. Am I really going to compare or investigate relationships, correlations, and influences, or am I just going out there to find what is there and then going to describe what I have found? Just going to describe or just going to report what I have found out there. So a research question can be used to analyze and investigate a topic. It is written as a question and is inquisitive in nature. So there are several of them depending on which approach you want to take. So there are those causal questions, there are descriptive questions, and also there's comparative questions. Okay. So I'm not also going into those hypotheses. I think we've talked about that. We know what those things are. So that is when you are going to do research. And then that is where, when you do research, you are going to either fail to reject. That's where we have the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. So you fail to reject an alternative hypothesis depending on the kind of results you get. So then after that, of course, the significance of the study. Now, I want us to think about the justification of the study and significance of study, because for those who are just starting out, most young scholars try to find it a bit difficult when they are told. I've met scholars telling me, okay, Nicholas, my university requires me to write the justification of the study and also the significance of the study. I don't know. I think this is one and the same thing. What is your opinion on this? What is the difference between justification of study in the context of proposal writing, the academic proposal? What is the difference between hypothesis of study, between the significance of the study and justification of the study? Anybody can just give their opinion. As I said, these are opinions and we are entitled to opinions. No one is going to pin us down because of our opinions. For researchers and scholars, we just give opinions. Even the papers that we publish, the data we get are just interpreted based on our opinions. So anybody can, if a student comes and tells you that they have been asked to write both the significance of their study and the justification, and to them they think it is one and the same thing, what do you tell them? What is the difference? Just in your opinion. It does not have to be the most correct one.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Dr. Lawal.
Yes.
Yeah. So the rationale or justification of the study speaks to the outcome of the study. What effects will the study have in terms of what effect will the study have? But the significance speaks to the impact, the long-term effect. How does it change what is currently being done? How does it influence the current practice, or what's the long-term effect of doing what one is doing in that current study? But the rationale is looking at a short-term effect. What exactly is the basis for doing this study right now? But the significance is looking at a longer-term effect of, after all is done, how does it affect the current knowledge?
Thank you. I don't want to add more into that, but I'll just do an explanation. You've given us a very good way, a very simple way of explaining to someone. So if somebody talks about justification of the study, this is about the output of that research. While the significance of study is about the outcome of your research. The output of your research is the data, current data you are collecting. How is this going to make us understand this subject more? How is it going to help us understand the gray areas? Why is it important for us to collect this data? So that's what I'm saying. Justification is focusing on the output, which is the data sets you are collecting. How is this data set important? But the significance is the long term. So the significance is talking about now the outcome. You've collected this data. In fact, the significance is where we're going to talk about the so what. So the significance is how is it going to influence policy? How is it going to influence practice? How is it going to influence future research, for example? So when somebody talks about justification, tell them, when they want to write the justification part, is just tell them, write how the data you are collecting is going to make us understand or help us deal with the current problem as it is in the short term. But when they want to write about significance, let them think the outcome after doing this research. How will it influence research? How will it influence policy? How will it influence the current practice within the field? So that is the difference. So when you are writing the justification or the significant study of your, or the significant part of your problem, this is where you can start by teasing out the problem again so that we just remember, but in very few sentences. Don't dwell so much because you have described the problem already. So you can start by just, reminding us of the problem in a sentence or two, and then now go ahead now and tell us the data collected from this study. That is the justification. The data collected from this study will help us understand this because the data will be generated on this, on this, on this, and this is how this will now help us understand the influence of this on this, the influence on this on this, and then how then ultimately will this change things. So that is now the difference. So when somebody asks about the justification and the significance of the study, tell them justification focuses on the output, the data sets we are collecting. How will that make us understand what is happening? The significance of the study talks about the outcome of your research, the long term. At the end of it, how will it influence what is currently happening? I'm not going to dwell so much there because I think it's simple. Then after that, we go to literature review. And this will make a lot of sense tomorrow when we will be talking about the open access solutions that you can use in literature review. Now, literature review is not just about summarizing what is out there. I read mostly through the literature review section of most scholars, and you find that they're just summarizing what other people have done, but without synthesizing the literature. Synthesizing literature should be able to make you, when I'm reading to you your literature review section, apart from just telling me what is out there, I want to actively be also seeing the gaps. So when you are doing your literature review section, it has to be informed by the objectives. So your objectives will inform the kind of literature you are going to review. So when you are, I'm not saying that if you have 4 objectives, you are going to review literature under 4 subheadings. No. So you could have 4 objectives, and under each section, you could even do 3 or even 5 subheadings, depending on the kind of literature you want to, and also the kind of study you are going to do. I cannot tell you then, what amount of literature you need to review, but it has to be sufficient anyway. But it is the literature review section is always guided by the objectives. So even when you are arranging your literature review section, make sure that it also follows the order in which your objectives appear. I don't want to start reading the literature review section and you're already talking about the impacts of something. Maybe one of the objectives, like the last objective, would be maybe, let's say, looking at the growth parameter, not the growth parameters. Let's say you started by formulating a diet, you analyze that diet, so you got the approximate analysis of a specific diet, then you went ahead to feed fish on that diet, and now you are feeding fish on that diet and comparing the performance of that diet against the performance of a conventional diet, and you are looking at how then that influences growth, it influences water quality parameters, it also influences flesh quality. So if the objective 1 was about the proximate analysis of that feed, I wanted to start reviewing literature and approximate analysis of fish feeds. So that when I read through a literature review section, I see that it is structured in the way the objectives appear. And then under each, now, based on your own knowledge, you can easily say, okay, under proximate analysis, I want to talk about all this, feed quality, protein sources, the problems associated with the different protein sources, all that. And then you go to the next one, which is now going to review literature attached to growth parameters. Then you talk about fish growth, factors affecting fish growth, for example. Then when you are talking about water quality parameters, talk about water quality, the most important aspects of water quality. So I want the literature review section to be structured in the way that the objectives appear, so that it's clear for me to follow that, okay, this literature this person is now reviewing is speaking to this specific objective because I can follow through them. Now, you need to do enough literature review. And you remember at the beginning we said, I need to do research before I need to research before I do research. Meaning that you need to read so that you understand what is out there. You cannot read everything, of course. You cannot be able to say that I know all that has been studied in this topic, but ground yourself enough that if somebody challenges you, you can always tell them, okay, I read through, I know what has been studied. This aspect is understood, this one is understood, this one is understood, but there's still a bit of some gray areas in this specific aspect. So these are the things I want you to look at, even as you go through this literature review section. And again, as I said, it's not just about summarizing what other people have done. It's about critiquing. It's also about synthesizing, so that you tell us, okay, there are 3 studies by so and so, so and so, so and so on the aspects of cassava composite flour, for example. But then most of these 3 studies have really focused on this and this, and these are the results they have found. However, there still exists some literature gaps on this and that and that. So when I'm reading now, I can always trace back to your statement of the problem and relate it back to the literature review, because I don't want to review literature without pointing to us the gaps you have identified in literature. So during your literature review section, I just don't want to see summaries. Of course, it's good to tell us what has been done out there, what is known, but I always want to see in between or at the end of it, I want to see what it is that is still not known, even about the specific subheading that we are now reviewing at that time. Now, the other thing that I also want to talk about, and this is important for all aspects of writing, even when we will be talking about now writing a manuscript, the transitioning between paragraphs or transitioning between subtopics. Okay, you are talking about water quality, and then you want to now start talking about fish growth. Before you transition to this other one, I want you to prepare me how then these are linked, so that when I see fish growth, you should, in the last paragraph, or in the last sentences of your last paragraph, in the last few sentences, you've already started hinting to the fact that water quality parameters, water quality can influence the growth of fish. So when you come now to the subheading that is talking about fish growth parameters, then I understand, because then I understand that some of the aspects of fish quality, fish growth have already been mentioned, that is water quality. So when you talk about fish growth, because I know at one point we'll talk about water quality affecting fish growth, then you've already hinted. So if it's about diet, if it's about this, so make sure that as you come to the next section, try hinting. It does not have to be explicit and really elaborated so much, but hint to it, so that when I read through, I start seeing that, okay, this is why those 2 last sentences were important, because they were preparing me so that I can link this paragraph to this other paragraph. That is true even when you are writing your manuscript. When you are coming to the next paragraph, I want to see a hint of that next paragraph in the previous paragraphs. It could be the last sentence or the last 2 sentences, so that when I read the next paragraph, I will be, I think this guy was already preparing me for this. That is why they introduced this specific thing that they were talking about. We will see a little bit of some examples somewhere. It comes with writing a little bit. So under literature review, of course, this is also this is where we get conceptualization. So this situates our research within broader academic discourse. So that's why in literature review, you are going to tell us what is known, what is not known, what is happening at the global scale also a little bit, so that we know if people are feeding fish, what is the current practice, what is conventionally done, what is the current practice, what are the problems associated with the current practice that you are trying to do research to change. Okay, here's also the identification of gaps, justification of research, and also methodological insights also. So we do literature review because then we want to stand on the shoulders of those who did research before us. I think we also don't want to purport that our idea is so novel that no one has ever done something like that before. Okay, so fine, it could be, but then it's just about also trying to give credit to those who have gone ahead of us to do this research. That's why every time you're doing literature review, in places where the information is, picked, or the sentences are informed by research done by other people, it's always good to give credit. So this is just by citing those who did this work. So you can cite, you also need to cite, because if you don't, then that is plagiarism. If you use my idea without citing me, then you have taken my work without giving me due respect as a researcher. Okay. So I also don't want to talk about most of this. These are because these notes will be shared. So I think there's other details that you will read through just to see. There has to be comprehensive coverage of research. You need to see what current research is about, focusing on the latest studies to reflect current developments. So if you tell us that currently a lot of studies have focused on alternative sources of protein for fish feed formulation, then you talk about those alternatives. You talk about people are trying Azolla, people are trying that, but this current research, the proposal is going to deal with mostly BSF, that is black soldier fly. So we know, so that we get to understand that you understand the problem, what is currently being done, and then you are pointing us to what is being, what still needs to be done more. Okay, proper citations is also important, as I said, because then this helps you deal with the issues of plagiarism. So adhere to certain style to maintain academic integrity. Also, sometimes your university tells you to use APA. Sometimes they tell you to use Chicago, for example, and all these things. So that would be important. I don't know whether how many people are using reference managers. Just tell me the reference management tool you are using. If you are still writing your references manually, just type manual. And if you are using reference managers, then just type in the chat which reference management tool you are using. So then there is also clarity and coherence. As I said, I want it to be as clear as possible so that when I read through, I understand the tail and the head. I don't want to just be there looking through all these things without knowing where all is coming from. Tomorrow we will look at where you can get literature from, how you can read, how you can synthesize, and how you can summarize literature. That is part of what we are going to do tomorrow. After that, of course, the third chapter is always about methodology and approach to your work. So basically, I'm not going to do a lot of talking here because different fields or different studies will have different approach and different methodologies. So it's difficult for me to tell you that when you're writing a methodology part, this is how you write it. Because if you're going to do an experiment in the field, for example, if you're in the field of agriculture or aquaculture, you're going to set up your experiments differently. So your methodology section is going to be different from someone who is going to administer questionnaires. So it's difficult for me to now start narrating how to each and every single methodology that is going to be used. Okay, so I think what I just want to talk about here is just that I'm just going to see if somebody has asked a question. Okay, I was just trying to see. There's also something I want to see. So some are doing manual. There's no problem. We all started from there. Some are doing manual. Some are doing Zotero, Mendeley, Zotero, manual, Mendeley, Zotero, and Mendeley. Yeah. So I'm seeing most people are already, some are doing manual, quite a number also. But then I would, some are also doing EndNote. I would really strongly advise that you use a reference manager. If you don't have a reference manager, then writing becomes very, very painful, because then after doing all the actual work of reviewing literature, writing all these things, then you come back now to start thinking of how then do I cite this one? Which one did I cite? Did I write the citation correctly? Remember when sometimes you are told to do APA, you are told there has to be a full stop after the first name, and those things are going to just take your time. It's going to be a very difficult thing. But if you have a reference manager, it cites for you as you write. So you write and it cites, you write and it cites, and you don't have to worry about leaving some citations outside. So learn how to use a reference manager. And I have been using Mendeley for a long time, and it's the most convenient for me. I also know how to use Zotero, yes, but the one that has served me so well and the one that is the most convenient is Mendeley. So if we get some time tomorrow, we can go through Mendeley. I can show you how to use Mendeley, because then that can help you in your writing. Now, the methodology outlines the strategy for conducting research to answer questions of, so basically it's just how did you do your work? So how did you collect your data, or how will you, because we are writing a proposal, so how will this data be collected? Are you going to use a mixed method, for example, where you're going to get both qualitative and quantitative data? Are you going to do a longitudinal study or a cross-sectional study, for example? A longitudinal study is where you are going to recruit households, for example, certain subjects, and then follow the impacts of this intervention over time, just to see what happens, if there are changes in their livelihoods or changes in their pain after some time, or a cross-sectional study where you are just going to get a screenshot of what is happening right now and reporting what is happening right now. If it's an experiment, how are you going to set up your experiment? What is going to be the experimental design? How many replicates are you going to do? What is the justification for that specific methodology you are using? These things this is just explaining how then you are going to do your work. As I said, I really also don't want to get in, because each study will be unique. There are those that will require you to go ahead and even justify, determine population size or sample size based on a certain population. Those calculations are there. Give a justification for why you are doing research, where you are doing it, all those things. But the most important thing about the methodology part is make it as clear as possible so that people don't question whether there is, the methodology you are describing will give you the results that you desire. Okay, so again, as I said, it's not like somewhere I'm going to tell you how to write each and every single section, because people come from different fields. So in the field of engineering, there's a certain detail that you need to give that maybe somebody in the field of economics might not want to give. So the only thing I'm talking about here is just trying to make sure that your methodology section is as clear and as detailed as possible. Then after that, of course, we always have the time frame. So this is always the work plan. And this is just going to tell us what will be done at what time. Some people try to ignore this, but it's important in terms of planning. And when whoever is reading your proposal can gauge your level of understanding, especially how you estimate the work ahead of you by looking at your work plan. Because I want to give you an example. There's a time a student was writing something on fish growth. And one of the aspects they were going to look at is called length at first maturity. And they were also looking at what we call gonadosomatic index. Now, let me go to gonadosomatic indexes. Don't worry about it so much. I just want to give context. If you're not from the field of aquaculture, don't worry. These are very simple things. But gonadosomatic index is just going to look at the ratio of gonads against the body weight and how it changes as the fish matures. Now, I've said as the fish matures, meaning that this can only be done with mature fish. But this person was going to rear their fish from 10 grams to, they were only going to rear them for 2 months. And then all this while they were going to feed the fish and do water quality parameters and growth. And they were now also going to give, they also included an objective that was talking about gonadosomatic index. So from the timelines, it's very clear to me, I know very well that this person does not understand what gonadosomatic index is, because then if they understood it, they could not have included it here, because they are going to do a research. They are going to finish their research when the fish is not even mature. So this is also very important. So just make sure that you plan well. You know when to give reports, what to do, when to do reconnaissance study, or when to go out there and do piloting. These ones are important. Okay, I'm not going to give that. That is some of the things you are going to still read through when I share this. So what questions do you consider when setting up your schedule or work plan? Well, when will your research start and finish? I think I've talked about that a little bit. Are there stages to the research, like piloting, screening, interviews, planting, laboratory analysis, depending on the kind of study you are doing? Are the timelines realistic? Is it influenced by external constraints or deadlines? How will you provide regular updates and progress reports? To whom will you be providing these updates? This will help you with the planning. And if you are working as part of a team, or you are working as part of a project, then make sure that it aligns with because then if the project samples once every week, and they go to the lake, hire boats, and do all these things, are going to collect data with them, and you want to say that I will be collecting data every day, then they will tell you, yeah, but then that does not align with our timeline. So you might end up paying for that. So try to fit into the context within which you are writing. The budget, this one I think is also very relevant for, and especially for when you're writing research for funding, because sometimes you'll be asked to justify why you need certain things. So if you write that you need a 4-wheel drive off-road car, then you'll be asked, why do you need that? And you're just going to do research within the city. So these are also very important. Sometimes you're told to do what we call a budget proposal. So budget proposal is where you are going to do a budget and justify why that budget is necessary. Then list of references. This is all that you have cited. So you have cited people. So make sure that everything that is cited in text is also listed. The other thing that I also want to say in writing that we are also going to talk about when you're writing our manuscript is, if you have a figure or a table in your proposal, make sure that in your writing it is mentioned. I have seen people write, they have tables and figures, but then they describe everything without even talking about table 1, without talking about figure 2. So I read through the proposal and ask myself, at what point do I have to refer to this table or this figure? Because in the writing, no one has directed me to when I should see the table. So when you have a figure or a table, make sure that it is mentioned in your writing. That is what makes it important, or that is what makes it relevant to the proposal you are writing. Otherwise, if I'm seeing tables and figures and they're not referenced, or we've not talked about them, then I'll be asking myself, why are they even here? Because you've not made them, you've not given them a home in this writing. I've not seen you mention them anywhere. You've not. So why are they even here in the first place? So that should be important. And why do proposals get rejected? The nature of the problem. The failure to establish general significance of your work will make your work. This will just throw out your work. If a supervisor, that is the thing they focus on so much. What is the problem this person is trying to solve with the data they are going to collect? If they feel that there's nothing new you are bringing, there's no problem you are trying to solve, or there's nothing much you are trying to make us understand, they will just say, okay, there's nothing you are bringing to the table, so this proposal is thrown out. The research plan, if the research plan is vague and not presented in detail, if you lack testable hypotheses or too many hypotheses, if you are too ambitious, if I feel like you are biting more than you can chew, if you are going to do the impact of climate change on fish productivity, then I know you have a problem. So you are biting more than you can chew. You need to tell us what specific aspects you are talking about and all these things. So I will end this presentation here and then allow us to have a little bit of a plenary before we break for a few minutes. Then we come back to the second and last session of the day. But I want to go through also the charts just to see if there's anything that we can address. But then, as I said, I'm not going to answer questions alone. We are here and we are all going to try and give our opinions based on this. So I'm going to read through the chart just to see if there are things we need to discuss. And I will go here. Some people are using mainly, what is the difference between hypothesis and assumptions of the study? Who wants to try? Somebody's asking, is there any difference between hypothesis and assumptions of the study? As I said, I have talked a lot, so I also would really want to, tap into your wisdom and also your experiences. As I said, these are opinions, even mine are opinions. I can't say that I have everything figured out. So I also want to get your opinions. Let's start with this. Somebody asked, what is the difference between hypothesis and assumptions of the study? So if somebody says, okay, I'm writing these are the hypotheses of my study, and then these are the assumptions of the study. What is the difference? Is it one and the same thing, or are there differences? In your opinion, I want someone to try, or two people to try. I don't want to call people out, but I would really wish that we try. Anybody? I've also seen Abraham saying that using reference manager is key for publication process. I agree 100% because it's very difficult after writing. Then you now want to start editing your references. manually, and you want to start, you say, okay, let me go back and see, did I cite this person? What is the correct spelling of their names? Do I need to put a full stop at the end of their name? All those things. So if you have a reference manager, you just click. And then the other thing is also, let's say you have formatted it according to APA, and then you've taken it to a journal, and that journal tells you that we don't do APA here. I want you to go and do Chicago, or I want you to go and do Harvard. Then if you have a reference manager, you just click, and then it will format it for you automatically into the new reference style that you want. But if you want to do it manually, then you will have to go back to every single reference and again do it manually. So you don't have that time. But even as we go through that, I want you to tell me the difference between hypothesis and assumptions. There are so many researchers here. You can't tell me you don't want to give me your opinion. Anybody?
Maybe I can. My name is Calvin. Maybe yes. I can give a try. In context, I think an hypothesis is testable prediction between variables. Basically, that is validated through research, or an assumption is, I think, is anecdotal. That is in the field, maybe you're able to accept as proof, but you can't really establish it as a foundation as a part of the study.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Doreen, also. And any other person? I'll also give my opinion at the end.
Okay, thank you. So hypotheses are they attempt to predict the relationship between the variables of the study, while assumptions are, I'm trying to avoid using the same word, like the givens. We are assuming that participants will be honest, or yeah. So such, so assumptions is what you it allows you to proceed with the research, because now you're saying this is given. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think that is the simplest and the easiest explanation. I think I was also trying to look for words, but I think Doreen has put it for me in a very simple way, that hypothesis is trying to predict relationship or trying to predict outcomes based on maybe prior information or a little bit of some knowledge. So we are trying to say that there will be, we hypothesize that there will be a relationship or there will be no relationship, or there will be a correlation or there will be no correlation. But an assumption, when you're going to the field to collect data, you assume that there will be no floods. You assume that the weather will be favorable. You assume that the participants will not drop out of. So assumptions are just, as you've said, we are assuming for best case scenario. So we are assuming that there will be ideal conditions when we go to the field to collect data. So here we are not predicting the outcome of the research, but we are predicting what will happen during the course of our data collection. Someone has talked about, I think there's something I saw before we break. There's something I saw. We're just going through. I'm going through something. There's something I saw somewhere. Okay, I think it's here. No, this was towards the beginning. I saw someone asking about. Okay, somebody was asking about ND in Mendeley. When you see ND, it means there is no date. So it means, and I will show you, maybe tomorrow if you get time, I'll show you how to use Mendeley and how to fix some of the problems that so many people deal with. Sometimes if the rubrics are not correct, then it gives you wrong citations, and you don't know how to deal with that. Then I'm learning how to use Mendeley, but still not well versed. Okay, that's okay. Questions about Mendeley. Why does AND? I've talked about that. Please differentiate knowledge gap and problem statement. I think someone already even replied to that, and I think in our discussion you picked out what the knowledge gap is. The knowledge gap is what is still not known, but then the statement of the problem now can have the knowledge gap plus the actual problem in industry. So people are struggling with this, but then the knowledge gap is, what is it that is still not understood in academia? Research has focused on this, but then this still remains unknown. So yeah, between theoretical and conceptual framework, theoretical framework is just about the theories that underpin your work. So review the different theories and see how they fit with your work. But conceptual framework is how these variables are related. So what leads to what, and how is variable 1 related to variable 2, and what is the outcome of this interaction. So that is why it is always drawn in form of a flow of a chart or a flow diagram, just showing the relationship between the variables. So we know that this is the independent variable, these are the intervening variable, and this is the dependent variable, for example. So here in the conceptual framework, you are going to show us how these concepts relate in terms of variables, so that we see the interaction between these variables. Okay. Assumptions do not control, can be controlled. Okay. Kindly clarify on the process of research questions and objectives. It should come first. Most of the time, we in most proposals that I see, and again, as I say, look for what the university requires, but we get objectives first before. You can have your own research questions in your head, but then in the context of formulating your research, we have the research questions that will inform, because those are the questions you're asking yourself that will now inform the objectives you are going to formulate. But also, sometimes after having these objectives, you are also going to ask yourself questions about these objectives, so that you know the data sets to collect. So you say, I have objective 1. What questions am I asking myself about objective 1, so that I know the specific data sets to pick to answer those questions. Somebody asked, how long should a problem statement be? I don't want you to call it a problem statement. I want you from now on to call it statement of the problem. Okay, I see people writing a lot about problem statement, but I think it should be called statement of the problem, because you are stating the problem. I don't know how long it should be, but my supervisor tells me that if it goes beyond 3/4 of a page, then it's not concise enough. Maybe you are just fumbling. You don't know what the problem is. So we are told, try to keep it as concise as possible. So we are always encouraged to try to keep it within 3/4 of a page. Don't go beyond 1 page. They will read through and tell you that maybe you are still repeating a lot of background, and yes, we will get the slides. We are going to share the slides at the end, and plus so many other materials. In academic research, is it wise to avoid intermediary variables? I don't know what intermediary variables is. There are several variables. Sometimes you have intervening variables. I don't know what intermediary variables is. Maybe you can explain. I know the intervening variables, sometimes the control variables, the dependent and independent. The intermediary ones are not really clear. We can come back to check around that. But I would want us to go for a little break and then come back for the next session. So you can stretch and just grab a cup of water and a bottle of coffee. And we will come back to the next session, because then even after the next session, we are still going to have a plenary. I want Kevina to take us for a break and tell us when we are resuming, so that we can just go ahead and now start writing our thesis, because we are coming back now to write. We assume that our proposal has been approved. We have gone to the field, we've collected data. Now we are writing, we are now reporting the results. So actually, we are not going to talk about the thesis, but we are going to talk about a manuscript. How do you prepare a manuscript for publication? Because it's a requirement for you to graduate. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. A, for that informative session. I have a few announcements for those who are not able to join us at the beginning of the session. The notes and recordings will be shared after the training. We'll also have certificates of participation, which, as mentioned in the emails, will be based on the 2-day attendance. And an attendance list is going to be shared in the chat shortly for you to fill in your names. Kindly fill in your names as you'd like to appear in the certificate. So that's 2 of your official names. Yeah, and I think that's it. We're going to have a 10-minute break, and we'll resume at 11:07. Thank you. In case you have any queries or questions available in the chat, just feel free to ask them. Thank you.
I hope you also got up from the chair, took some water. Okay. So many people are here. Great. Yeah, this makes me know that I'm not alone. Sometimes when people resume, you can be talking to yourself, and you think you have people listening to what you're saying. Now, we are going to the second session of this. I think this should take us maybe like 1 hour, 30 minutes or 2 hours maximum. I'm also, because part of what we need to talk about writing already has been talked about. So I'll not repeat. If there's anywhere I think we are going to repeat, then there's no need of repeating. But also, I also know that most of us have different experiences writing. I don't want us to go into those theses and all those things, because even when you're writing a thesis, if you have a good proposal, the only thing you are adding to the thesis is just the results. So it's a requirement in most Kenyan universities that you publish at least one paper before you defend your master's thesis, and 2 for PhD. So it's important that we learn how to prepare these manuscripts for publication. Some of us have never published, so some of us do not have an idea of what a manuscript looks like. A manuscript, how then I have these results, I have analyzed them, I've even written my thesis, maybe partly, or I'm already currently in the process of writing my thesis. Because sometimes what we tell people is, of course, it's good to write your thesis, but your thesis is an internal thing that can be, you can easily, also your supervisor can help you influence how fast it can move through the system. But a paper is out there with a journal. So it's an external thing. You don't have control over how long it will take in the process, how these reviewers will look at your work and either reject or accept it, all these things. So it's a good thing that you start with that. Even after getting the data, you can decide, okay, maybe objective 1 and 2 can be combined into one paper. Then I send it up there. So even as I struggle to write my thesis, already my paper is out there being reviewed, so that it does not delay you. Yeah, you could write a thesis and then it is the publication that will now deter you from graduating in time, because then you will be told you've not published any paper. So there's no way we can organize a defense for you. So that's why we are alive to the fact that you have to publish. And also, even just away from publishing for graduation, there's this thing about publish or perish. So we need to publish. And for us to be able to publish, we must know how to structure our manuscripts so that we can send them out there for publication. Okay, so at this point, let's assume that our proposal was accepted. We went to the field, collected data, analyzed that data. Now we have data that we want to publish about. So this publication, when you want to start the publication journey, it's always good to think about your story. What is that story that you want to tell in your paper? Because the paper has to tell a coherent story. It has to tell a story from the beginning to the end, which means that it has to tell a story that has an introduction or a background that gives us context. Then it has to tell a story that has in the middle, where we have now the gist of the things, the results. This is the background. This is how I collected this data. These are the results that I collected. This is what the results mean, and this is the implication of my results. So those are the things we need to look at so that we have a good manuscript that can be published. And then beyond that, some people say, okay, I have written a good manuscript, but I don't know where to take it. I don't know how to select a good journal. I don't know how to look at, or I don't know how to identify what we call predatory journals. Then you end up throwing away very good piece of data or very, very good pieces of data to some journals that will just waste it, or some journals that will just take it and use it for something else. Okay, so I think no, I'm not yet. I've not started presenting yet. So don't worry, I will start now. So I will now show us how then we are going to structure our manuscript for publication. And again, as I said, we have different levels of experience. So I'm also going to tap into your experiences. Okay, so let's start from here. How many of you who have published papers? So maybe you can tell me. 0 is also a number. So just in the chat, how many papers have you published, or how many papers have you been part of? It does not have to be that you are the first author. No, even if you are the 10th author, if you can take intellectual responsibility of the results in that paper, then you are an author effectively. So just type in the chat, how many papers have you published? 1, 0, 75, 1,000, 5. just type. Because then we are at different levels of publication. So we just want to know, but we all started from somewhere. So not all of us have published. Some have published more than others. That's okay. We start from somewhere. Most of us start from, not most of us, everyone starts from zero. And then we graduate into publishing 17 papers, 75 papers. No problem to that. We start from somewhere. But I just wanted to know so that we know how then this conversation can go. And one of the reasons why we are here today is to learn how then we can be able to even publish our first paper, because then we will know how to structure a paper, what goes behind the selection of a good journal, what goes into the peer review process. So that's why, as I said, 0 is also a very good number, because then it gives us an idea that, okay, so there are people who still just are in the process of starting, so that we don't overlook some things that we would think are obvious. Because if you have people who have not published, then you also want to also try to guide them in a way that also makes it easier for them to. Now, would want to know from those who have never published, why have you never published a paper? Maybe somebody can just give us a reason. You can unmute and tell us, or you can just type in the chat, why have you not published? People have different reasons why they have not published. So it would be interesting also to understand why we have not published. Maybe anybody?
Yes, I can say.
Yes.
Personally, I have done like 2 researches in the clinical area, but I did not know which are the journals I can channel my work, or what platform can I give my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is one of the things we are going to talk about today, journal selection criteria. Any other person who also wants to share their experience? I'm just also going into the chat just to see. Technical know-how, the initial stages into research, publishing houses taking too long to accept manuscripts. Yes, I don't know how to start and when. I was to publish after presenting in an international conference, but they needed about 10 cash before they edit and publish for me, so I didn't have the 10,000. So, yeah, these are some of the challenges that we have. It's called article processing fee, and the problem is you might not know whether it is genuine or not. So you might end up sending a 10,000 shillings, and then they don't publish that paper for you. And they publish it, and then the university tells you this one is a predatory journal, we are not counting this as a publication, and then you just realize you threw away your hard work, to a journal that does not even do anything. So some people say writing is hard work. I don't know how true this is. What is your opinion? Is writing hard or is it easy? Is it hard or is it easy? Is there echo on my side? Maybe it was on the other side. Yeah, I think the initial the other speaker, the previous speaker, had a bit of some feedback. Yeah. So yeah, people saying that it can be hard work. Yes, I agree. I agree. And if it was very easy, then people would be having hundreds and hundreds of papers. So it's not very easy work. I appreciate that. At TCC Africa, we recognize that it's not a very easy research. So it's not a very easy. So it's not very easy, and sometimes it's not very easy because of sometimes very simple things like reference management. We are going to talk, because then sometimes you want to write, but then you think of, after writing all these things, citing all these works, I still have to sit down and start editing these references manually. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it over the weekend. So it could be just because of the small technical issues that is making it difficult for you to write. Or I don't know that there are tools out there that can now help me write or synthesize literature, or get papers to read. So maybe some of those things are what we are going to talk about. So if you've never published, I was just like you until I published this paper out of my master's thesis. in 2014. That was my first time publishing a paper. And when they sent me the link to the paper, and then I went to the website, to the journal's website, and saw my paper, it looked so beautiful. It looked so handsome. I used the wrong one. The paper looked so handsome because they had edited it. So, when you are doing a manuscript, you just send out plain text. They now go ahead and do the structuring according to what the journal requires and all these things. And it looks very handsome. So I looked at it and said, I would want to have more of this. And also the email that your paper has been accepted also gives you, there's a feeling that comes with it. Those who are published know when you get the email telling you that your paper has been published, and then they give you a link through which you can access your paper, the feeling is very handsome. Okay, I don't know, maybe at this point I can use beautiful so that the ladies in the room do not feel left out. But yeah, the email, the feeling is always very beautiful. So it's something that if it is your first paper, the feeling is always very nice. But it never goes away. Every time you receive that email, you feel very nice. So I think writing is a very simple thing. I'll just put all this together. So we just need to get into the mood of writing. So I don't know how you get in the mood. Some people get in the mood by sometimes listen to music, or I watch some comedy, or whatever it is that I like doing, and just relax and get myself in the mood of writing. Then I write my first draft, then I revise, and then I finish. It's a very simple thing. I don't think this should be difficult. Yeah, very simple. Getting in the mood, writing your first draft, revising a million times, and then finishing. Very simple. Yeah, exactly. But it's easier said than done. It's just very simple on paper. You can say it's simple because I'm getting in the mood. Once I'm in the mood, I just write my first draft, then I revise and finish. Yeah, it's not that straight line like I'm trying to describe it here. There are quite a bit of things into it. And when you now start dealing with peer reviewers, that is when you now start realizing, hey, what did I get myself into? But then also, when you start publishing, then you now get into the mood of throwing in your research topic in every conversation. So that is me sprinkling a little bit of my research topic in every conversation, especially with my peers. So you'll be talking about so many other things, and then you say, there's a paper we are writing, and this one is focusing on the use of essential oils in the production of, so people in this field know, people in the space of academia and research understand that when you meet your peers, after pleasantries and you talk about so many things, then finally at the end of the day, you have to sprinkle a little bit of your research topic into the conversation. Nice feeling. But this feeling is only fulfilling if you have published something out there, or if you are in the process of writing something. If you are doing some very good research, but you are not publishing, no one is reading about you, then people will be asking you, keep sprinkling these research topics into our conversations, but then I've never seen you write any paper. So I hope at the end of this conversation, we'll now have what we call bragging rights, because you will go back to your computer, search through it, and those manuscripts that are still lying there will get out of your computer into the world, so that they can be reviewed, published, and then we can now have the bragging rights to be sprinkling our research topics into conversations. But remember that in science, credit goes to the one who convinces the world, not to the one to whom the idea first occurs. I want that to sink. Okay? I want that to sink. Someone said here, I don't remember the name, but then they said that they have done quite some research in the field of clinical medicine. But then one is they didn't get to the point of publishing this work. So probably they have some very good data, maybe analyzed, and then they wrote a report out of it. And then maybe that report was given to the organizers, or the university, or the hospital, or the institution they work for. And then it ended there. So those reports are just somewhere in the shelves and in some computers where nobody can access them. Now, if somebody does the same kind of research like you have done and publishes it, you will keep saying, that was my initial idea, so-and-so stole my idea and published it. We will not give credit to you. We will give credit to the person who first convinced us that was the idea. Unfortunately, that is how it works. So make sure that if you have an idea, if you've done research, if you collected data, make sure it is published or it is shared with the world so that you can get credit. Because if somebody else shares that idea with the world ahead of you, the credit will go to them, not to you. So I think this is one thing that I want us to think about very critically. Then how then do we convince the world about our research? By writing. Now, before we even get to write the paper, I want us to put this in our heads already so that we are prepared. This is the publication procedure, and this is highly, highly summarized. So as an author, you write your manuscript in the way that the journal will dictate. So when you select a journal, there's a section in that journal that in the website that is called instructions to authors. So this is where you get instructions on how then you need to format your manuscript, the way tables should appear, all that. So after writing that, then you submit your paper. You submit this manuscript to the journal. Then the editor, I am an editor. I am an academic editor for +1. Then an editor is assigned. So different sections we have different section editors. So we have, let's say, in the field of aquatic sciences or in the field of aquatic food systems, I am the editor there. So when a paper is submitted in that area, then it is allocated to me. So an editor is assigned the manuscript. Then I look for reviewers. Then I send it out to reviewers to review. The reviewers will decide whether they want to review the paper or not, because it's voluntary work in most instances. So they will say, I don't have time, I have time. Then somebody will decide to, 2 or 3 people will say, okay, we'll look at the paper and give feedback. So then these reviewers will review, inspect, ask questions, give recommendations for you to deal with, whatever it is. Then once they review, they will return it to the editor. Then the editor will give these comments to you. Then you work on the comments or the review comments, give it to the editor. The editor sometimes, in most journals, will take it back to the reviewers and ask them that these are the comments you gave. This is how these people, because then when you are doing that, then it must go with a rebuttal. So each comment, you do a table. So you put a table, the comment, how you have addressed it, and the page in the manuscript where you have addressed it. I will show you an example later on of a rebuttal that I did. So I want this to sink before we get into the actual writing, because then this prepares us for the battle ahead, so to speak. So you will so the reviewers will ask questions and give recommendations. They give it to the editor. The editor gives these comments to you. You work on the comments. You give them the comments, the new manuscript. In fact, some journals will tell you we want the tracked version of the manuscript so that we see where you did the actual correction. Then we want a rebuttal, which is a table showing this is the comment, this is how I addressed it, this is the part of the journal where I am, the part of the paper where I am, so that they can easily follow. Just the same way you do it for thesis as well. After a presentation or even after proposal presentation in the school, you are expected to do a rebuttal. So you just tell us, this is what you asked, this is how I have addressed it, this is where I have addressed it. So then then they give it back to the reviewers to ask them, were your comments addressed effectively? Then the reviewers will say yes or no. If there are some that still need to be addressed, then they will say, okay, they have worked on this, and this, but they have omitted this one, so let them work on this. So they will go ahead and work on those ones. And then of course, if they say that the paper is okay, then they will recommend that the paper be accepted for publication. Then it is accepted, it's published. Then you now deal with the editor through the publication process. They will tell you do this, they will ask you certain questions or editing and all those things. And then your paper can also be rejected, and that's part of the journey. So if a paper is rejected, that does not mean that a paper can be rejected for several reasons. One could be because it falls outside the scope of the journal where you have submitted it, and that's why it's good to have a very good journal selection strategy. Or it can be rejected because it falls within the scope, but they're not interested in that topic. So let's say you are publishing in the field of aquaculture. The journal is publishing literature in aquaculture, but they are not interested in fish feeds. So they will tell you, fine, it falls within the scope, but we are really not keen on publishing in that specific aspect of aquaculture that we are talking about. So that paper cannot be published here. Or it can be rejected because it is weak. So it could be scientifically, it's not sound. There are aspects of it that are not correct. So they would say, okay, your methodology is too weak. How do you say? The reviewers will tell them, okay, is there still background echo until now? Anybody?
No, there's no echo.
Okay, thank you. So
Yeah, it's okay now. Thank you.
Those are the several reasons why a paper can be rejected. So for those who are just starting out, don't let a rejection dampen your spirit. I have published quite a number of papers, almost 70, but of course not as a first author. There are some that I'm, second or third author. But my papers, even last year, I got 2 rejections. Yeah, so it does not mean that when you submit a paper, it is rejected for whatever reason, you want to say, this is crap, I'm not going to try it again, I'm just going to stop this one here. No, don't let that discourage you. It's part of the journey, it's part of the process. Embrace it, take the comments they have given you, work on it, and either submit elsewhere or look for a different journal. Some of them will tell you, fine, it's okay, just work on these comments and then submit it back to us, we will publish. So there's reject and resubmit, or there's reject and take somewhere else. So I just want to prepare you that rejections might come. They will definitely come. I'm saying if you're publishing at one point, you will face rejection. And I'm just asking you that when you face this rejection, treat it as part of the journey. Don't let it dampen your spirit. And so you start saying, I don't want to publish, this thing is difficult. No. Okay? So that's what I wanted also to emphasize so that you get to understand. Now, then, what is peer review? A peer review is a process for scientists by scientists. Actually, it's not a gatekeeping thing. It's just trying to filter what is publishable as science. If we say that we just write whatever we like and send it out there and it's going to be published, then people will be publishing everything. So that's why we have the peer review process, okay? So that it also provides researchers with perspective. So you could think a phenomenon can be explained in a certain way, but then a peer will look at it from a different angle and tell you, did you explore this? So that you start looking at it very differently, okay? So peer review is used in scientific publication, like we are talking about right now. Grant review, I also review grant proposals for, I think one of the countries, there's a ministry in Serbia that recruited me as a reviewer. So whenever they receive grant proposals for funding, and especially in the field of food science, food systems, and also touching on aquaculture, then they will always send them to me just to review and see methodological rigor, all those things. So grant review, trainer promotion, these are where reviews are done. But then sometimes when you're submitting a paper, you are told to recommend, or you are told, okay, can you recommend possible reviewers? Because sometimes you struggle getting reviewers. And then you recommend reviewers you drink with. Is this a good thing, a good practice in research? If you are told to recommend reviewers and you recommend your friends, is it a good practice or is it not a good practice? Anybody can give, as we said, it's an opinion. Nobody is going to pin you down on your opinion. We also have ours. So if I don't like your opinion, I can also give mine. Is it a good thing to recommend people within your circles as potential reviewers for your work?
I don't think it's good.
Why do you think?
They might say yes and no. Because yes, if they're in my field of study, then we seem to have a common thought. And no, if we are doing it for our own gain, not informing policy, not informing work ethics. Yeah.
So you have seen the dilemma that you're going to find yourself into when you recommend the people that are close to you. They could be experts in your field, but are they going to give give objective comments? So this is now the delicate balance, and that's why it's not really recommended. I'm not saying you should not do it, but sometimes because what happens is you don't want your paper to go out with obvious flaws that somebody who does not know you could have picked out and critiqued. And most of the time, we do a lot of internal reviews. So when I write a paper, sometimes these are the friends to whom I send these papers and tell them, hey, I've written something. I know you're not going to be part of it, but then can you just look through it just to give me perspective? And then they do. So it's a very delicate balance. You cannot know whether they are going to give you, because they know you. So you can't know whether they are going to give you. And then also it's highly unlikely that they will be brutal enough with you. I'm not saying brutal like being malicious, but then being honest by telling you that the methodology I think is very weak, or the data analysis the techniques that you chose, are not really appropriate for this kind of study. They might end up trying to sugarcoat a lot of things because they know you. So very delicate balance. I don't recommend, but you still can do it, but it's a very delicate balance. Now, the constraints of peer review, and that's why sometimes it takes too long, that sometimes it's very slow. Yeah, you have a paper taking 2 years in the process, and you are trying to wait for this paper for your graduation, be sure you're not graduating in time. Sometimes you have conflicting views. I have found cases where as an editor, I got to send paper out to journal, to reviewers, and one recommends a rejection, another one recommends an acceptance. So as a reviewer now, as an editor now, you have to sit down and evaluate the manuscript again by yourself and decide what you think, or send it to a third person to have a look at it, and then they will now inform you. So based on there, then you'd say, okay, it was reviewed by 3 people, 2 recommended acceptance, 1 recommended rejection. So I'm going to go ahead and reject and accept this paper, or depending on, But I want you to see what the editor, for those who publish and those who read in the field of life sciences and mostly health sciences, know of the Lancet. This is one of those very good journals. Now, this guy says, Richard, who is the editor of Lancet, says, editors and scientists portray peer review as a quasi-sacred process that helps to make science our utmost object truth teller. But we know that the system of peer review is biased, unjust, unaccountable, incomplete, easily fixed, often insulting, usually ignorant, occasionally foolish, and frequently wrong. This is coming from an editor of the Lancet. Now, this one is coming from somebody who understands the process, because an editor, this is somebody who reaches out to reviewers, and he sends these papers out to be reviewed so that we can look at the quality and try to suggest for improvements. And if it's the one who has used those very strong terms, then you can imagine how frustrating this process can be. I'm not going to add anything to his voice. His voice was loud enough. Okay? So we have different aspects of scientific misconduct. So one of them is gift authorship. Gift authorship is where you are my friend, I'm publishing a paper, you didn't do anything in that paper. Sometimes you don't even know what is in that paper, but then I want to say, let me just put your name, you are my friend. The problem with that is, one time somebody will meet me at a conference and start engaging me about the paper they read with my name on it. And then I don't know anything about that thing. It will be so embarrassing. So they start saying, okay, Nicholas, yeah, there's a paper you published with so and so, and yeah, that was a nice one. It's talking about the nutritive value of tilapia fillets in a specific market in Kenya. Then you say, that paper was, we did that paper. Then you say, okay, maybe what methodology did you? Then you realize, hey, this was gifted to me, this authorship was gifted, but it's now becoming a burden. So it becomes a problem. There's redundant publication that also happens in some cases. So people decide, it's called redundant publication, or sometimes they call it salami publication. So you just cut a little bit enough to sustain a paper, and then also you present the same data in a different way and try to publish it. So you're just publishing the same thing, trying to dress it in different ways. It's like when you go to a party and you are told you can only pick one drink at a time. Then you go and put on your wig and try to come back to the line to pick another drink, and then you go home and change into your suit and come back and try to pick another drink. It's the same you're just trying to dress yourself differently. Okay. Then there's plagiarism. We know what plagiarism is. So plagiarism is where you are kidnapping someone else's idea. So you get my idea and put it there like it's yours, without citing me, without talking about the source of this information. You want to make us believe that you are the one who came up with it. Then there's also fabrication. Fabrication is where you are going to just create things that are not there, data. Then falsification. Is there a difference between fabrication and falsification? Just write in the chat so that we see. Maybe there's not so much difference. This one is, this is just one of those emails that I got when my paper is accepted. I think this is towards the end of this introduction so that we can start the actual writing. Now, scientific writing is as much about science as it is about writing. But for some reason, we tend to forget about the latter. So we tend to forget about the writing. So we spend most of our time writing proposals, collecting data, setting up experiments, writing data, collecting data, analyzing that data. And then it ends there. We write reports or back to office report, and then that's it. So we forget about the actual scientific writing and publishing, but we focus so much on the scientific data collection and other parts. That's why our goal should be to change the mindset about writing. Okay? But we know that you must keep practicing to improve your skills. So this is reading my old article back to myself. And I'm like, did I write that? How was I writing an introduction that looks like that? That makes no sense. I don't even know how this paper was published. So sometimes I read through my papers again, and especially like the ones I published in 2014 when I was just getting into publishing. Then you realize your methodology was, not really tight. The introduction you wrote was really floppy, but then, keep practicing. Over time, you get now to be conscious about so many things that when you start writing, you look out for those and say, okay, I need to add this aspect. This one is still missing. I need to add that. So I think that is one of those things that we need to be careful about. Then these ones are just normal things, why people publish. So motivation to publish, dissemination, career prospects, improved funding, ego, patent protection, and others. These ones I'm not going to read about that. Then there's what we call the publish more, read less dichotomy, where authors are journal focused while readers are article focused. So as an author, when you're writing a manuscript, you want to focus on publishing it in a very good journal. But then when readers download these papers, they don't care. What they want is that this paper contain sound scientific arguments and results. Yeah, that's what the reader wants. Okay. I will also not read all this. And then, what are the hallmarks of a good scientific writing? What is it that you want to see in a paper and say, this one was a good one? Maybe anybody can unmute and tell us, or you can write in the chat. What are the hallmarks of a good scientific writing? Again, these are opinions. There's nothing like right and wrong. It's my opinion. So if you don't like it, then you can also type your opinion. So what do you think is a hallmark? What are some of the hallmarks of good scientific writing?
I think you need to give credit where it belongs. So cite your work. To avoid
give credit. Don't purport that these things are just from my head, knowing very well that they were informed by research done by other people. Give credit where it belongs. Yes. Any other person? Any other person? As I said, these are opinions. I'll also read in the chat because we are now getting into the actual writing.
Doc, it's also about a message. It's a message. You are passing a message. It's not something that one struggles to know what you are talking about or writing about.
We want to good grammar, objectiveness. Yes, we want to pass. Yes, Agnes.
I think it should also be based on facts. So data collection facts, you must be very careful, and the statistics that you are referring to. And if you're doing secondary data, you must be keen and ensure the authenticity of the matter.
Okay. So I think we have really summarized. Some people have talked about the correct grammar. Some people have talked about the correct format and all these things and clarity. I think we've summarized like everything that is there to talk about. Yeah, the writing should flow well, tying to the conceptual framework, formal tone, communicates exactly what it's supposed to say. Replicability, very important. Facts, use the required format. I think we have all this, so it means that we know what is required. So I'll just add a few things to the voices, and all of them speak to what everyone has said. One of them is accuracy. So when you're writing, you need to get the facts straight and convey them without distortion. I think you've talked about this already. And also trying to do the story you want to tell. So you need to tell us an accurate story. The other one is clarity. You've talked about this, and also this goes into the grammar and all these things. your style should facilitate understanding of your meaning, not interfere. So don't write in a way that interferes with the understanding. So then be concise. Okay, do not waste your reader's time and patience with wasted words. However, if brevity interferes with clarity, give preference to a clear statement of meaning. Okay, so you want to be as concise as possible. But if you realize that I'm trying to be too concise, and then whatever I wanted to pass in this sentence, if I keep this sentence this short, then I don't think I've communicated. That's a sentence that is not talking about anything. So then I need to add a few other things. So again, try to be concise. But if you feel like brevity is interfering with clarity, then you need to give preference to a clear statement of meaning. Then the next one is elegance. Make your prose easy to read, interesting, and pleasant to the ear. So I think this is where we have how do you say? This is where we have people writing. Sometimes you find people writing very long sentences. I have seen people writing sentences that are even 4 lines long. You read through the sentences and realize that this person has put 2 or even 3 facts inside this sentence. That is why it is too long. So I always tell people, when you're writing and you realize you've written a very long sentence that is 3 or 4 lines long, read through this sentence again and ask yourself, am I putting a lot of information in this one sentence? Can I now break this sentence into 2, for example, or into 3, depending on how long it is, but still be able to convey the information I wanted to convey without making it too long? Because it's good to use, of course, simple and also sometimes compound sentences, but if you realize that you are loading a sentence with too much information, then people might lose part of the information you want to give them and pick just one because the sentence was too long. So they lost it in between the 4 lines. Okay. I think these ones I have talked about. So there are different forms of scientific communication. I think we know about this. So we have scientific posters, books and monographs, research articles. That is what we are talking about right now. We have blogs and social media, conference presentations, thesis and dissertations. These are all ways through which we can disseminate our scientific information. So our focus today is going to be research articles. So yes. Then we will now start the actual writing. I think we have done quite a bit of all these things. So we've talked about the chances that your paper, after review, there are chances that the paper is going to be accepted. If a paper is accepted without any review or any questions, then no, you are dealing with a journal that is not legit. You are dealing with most probably, there are very, very high chances you are dealing with a predatory journal. If you send a paper and then they tell you your paper has been accepted for publication, just send us money to publish it, just run away. Okay? And then the other outcome would be revise and resubmit. So the same journal can always tell you, okay, we've made a few comments, so make sure you revise, then just submit it back to us. Just revise and bring it back to us. Another outcome could be reject and resubmit. So it means we are still interested, but we need to rework. So we are still interested in what it is that you want to publish, but as it is right now, just go and do it. So this is where we talk about, we have gotten what we call major revisions. So major revisions are where we are told, we are telling you we cannot publish this thing as it is, so you need to rework. Minor revisions is where we are telling you to revise and resubmit. And sometimes it's flat out rejection. I've given reasons why this can happen. So the journal article will have the title, the abstract, the introduction, materials and methods, results, discussions and conclusions, depending on the journal you're publishing in. So I want us to start from here. So the anatomy of this is we are starting from the title. It provides a concise overview of the study's focus. Then we have the abstract that summarizes the study's objective, methods, results, and conclusions. An introduction that sets the stage with background information and research questions. Then we go to the methodology. So this is the details of the research design, procedures for replicability, and how this research was done. Then after the methods, we have the results. So the results, this is where we are presenting the data collected during the study. So we can collect this data and process it and then present it either as tables, figures, or just in text. Then we have the discussion. This is where the interpretation. So this is where we interpret the results and explore implications. So the discussion is just going to interpret the results that you have given us. Then the conclusions and recommendations. So here we summarize the findings and suggest applications. And then after that, we have the references. This is a list of all cited sources for credibility. And then we could have sometimes annexes that are talking about any supplementary information, or if you had maybe questionnaires and you want the reviewers also, as they review your work, you want them also to look at the questionnaires or some protocols that you used in your study just to make it authentic. And then also sometimes you have the acknowledgement, where you are acknowledging whoever supported this work, if it's a donor or a funder, or somebody went to the field and helped you collect data, but then they are not part of the writing. Yeah. Now, for those who are just starting and you're a student, when you are publishing your first paper out of your thesis results, I've seen some students, including in the acknowledgement, they acknowledge their supervisors, and then they are publishing with these same supervisors. No. When you are writing this paper, you assume that everyone else in that authorship is writing that paper. So it belongs to all of you. So you don't, you can acknowledge your supervisors in the main thesis, but when you're writing a paper and their names are there, you are not supposed to acknowledge them because they are part of the authorship. So how are they acknowledging themselves? So that is one thing I also wanted to point out in the acknowledgement section. Okay. I think these are a lot of things I've talked about. So we start with the title here. So the title sums up your work in a single phrase or sentence. So it is important because this is what is read by the largest number of readers. So the title is going to be read by those who read the actual paper in the journal, those who read it in the secondary or abstracting and indexing databases. We are going to talk about a database tomorrow called Dimensions AI, and you will see that the title goes there. So that's why it should be informative, specific, and concise. And again, as I said, try to keep it as concise, and if you can, keep it below 20 words. So 20 and below, okay? So you need to describe the contents accurately, describe subjects specifically. Most of the time these days, I have seen in these scientific circles that we are told to omit verbs in the titles of our papers. They are now telling you that if you want to use verbs like investigating, convert it into a noun and say investigation of. The reason is not always very clear to me, but I've seen it being fronted out quite a bit, that in the title, try to avoid omit verbs and to convert these verbs if you have to use them into nouns. It should be easy to understand, and it should also be suitable for, the title should also be suitable for indexing. Now, do not promise more than what is in the paper. So if you did not do gene editing, you only did gene coding, just tell us what you did. Because if you promise more than what is in the paper and then I don't get that information in that paper, I will be so disappointed that if I see your paper next time, I will not even cite it. Or I will not even bother reading your papers, because I will be like, this guy, the last time I read his paper, he was talking about certain things that he did not even do. So I went with a lot of enthusiasm and then I ended up wasting my time. So do not promise more than what is in the paper. In the title also, we are told to avoid abbreviations and jargons, and especially those that can be difficult for other people to understand. If I am not in your field and I'm looking for information in your specific field, research is becoming multidisciplinary, not is becoming. It is now multidisciplinary, multi-institutional. Now, I could be in the field of aquaculture, but I'm writing it, about the nutritive value of a specific fish, as an example. So I'm writing a paper on the nutritive value of Nile tilapia. Now, there's a food scientist somewhere who does not know the scientific name of Nile tilapia, but they want information on the nutritive value of Nile tilapia. They are writing a project and they want that information. So if in my title I wrote about the nutritive value of Oreochromis niloticus without putting Nile tilapia in brackets, they will not know that Oreochromis niloticus is Nile tilapia. I'm just giving you an example where jargon can easily disadvantage your paper, because we are going to talk about webmetrics and also bibliometrics tomorrow, and also research feasibility. You want your paper, you want to increase the chances of your paper being cited, because then that helps build your H index. It also helps build your citation data, your citation score. So that's why you don't want people to skip your paper thinking that it does not contain the information they want just because of a jargon in your title. So if you have jargons in your title, try to put it in bracket, just a common name, so that somebody knows that, okay, this is the Nile tilapia I'm looking for. Because if it is just left at Oreochromis niloticus, then that person will say, okay, I wanted a paper on 9 tilapia, so whatever I'm seeing here is not 9 tilapia, it is Oreochromis niloticus. But if you put it in the bracket, then they will know, okay, this is 9 tilapia. I'm just giving you an example so that it sinks. So you need to choose all your words carefully, avoid abbreviations or chemical formulas or jargon that is very difficult to understand. So a good title would have fewer words, possibly describing contents of the paper. And most of the time, we just start with a sketchy one. Don't kill yourself trying to get a very good title at the beginning. So when you're starting to write your paper, I want you to work with what they call a working title. So just have something guiding you through your writing, and then slowly by slowly, most of the time you'll even have the concrete or the final title coming later on, when you are even done with the writing. So that is why I always tell people, don't kill yourself trying to get a perfect title at the beginning. Just have something guiding you, then you will keep refining it at the end. Informative, I think I've talked about that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about before I leave this one is sometimes when you are submitting your papers to the journal will ask you for the title, and then they will also ask you for what we call a running title or a short title. So a running title is just a shorter version of the paper that a shorter version of the title. The title already is a short summary of the entire paper. Imagine now you are told to give a summary of that paper again, of that title again. That is where now you need to give what now they are calling the running title. So in this case, for example, the title here is Growth, Yield, and Quality Response of Snap Bean Plants to Different Inorganic Fertilizer Application Mediums. In this case, the running title is Response of Snap Beans to Inorganic Fertilizer. So reads like almost the first one, but it's a summarized version. The reason I'm bringing this up is sometimes you are submitting to a journal and then they ask you for a running title. One, you don't know what it is, or you fail to provide, and then they want to truncate based on their own knowledge. They will just truncate and put something there. So they might end up putting a very wrong running title because you need to provide. So if you're asking you for a running title, just summarize your title and give them something to work with so that they don't put theirs. After the title, you have the authors. I'm not going to talk so much about this. We know an author is the one who takes intellectual responsibility for the research results being reported. Remember when I was talking about gift authorship as a misconduct. If you cannot take what we call intellectual responsibility for the research results being reported, then don't allow yourself to be an author because somebody will engage you and then you will look stupid. Okay, maybe that's not the right word to use, but then you will look helpless. So if you know you cannot take what we call intellectual responsibility for the research results, just tell them, no, I don't want to be part of that because unless you give me that thing to read and understand, otherwise, if you publish that paper with my name and you've gifted me that authorship, I might find myself in a very difficult situation one time. So for now, I appreciate that you wanted to gift me, but no. Okay. So now authorship is often determined by contribution, prestige, and all these things. So depends on so many things. Those ones have not. That one is just a way some people have decided to determine, but that sometimes does not work in our context. There are universities that already have developed methods through which we can determine who becomes an author, but in our context, sometimes it's just as a student, it's you, then your supervisors, and maybe someone else who also contributed. Or if you're working in a project, then sometimes this is determined by other people. Sometimes you're not even part of the decision. You're told, okay, write that manuscript, and then you bring it to us. After the names of the authors, then we have the addresses and affiliations. We call them affiliations or addresses. So let's say the title of the paper, then you have the authors, you've listed them, then you put where each author comes from and you number them. So if author number one comes from institution number one, there's an author that comes from institution number 2, number 3, just list the institutions where these people come from and then indicate it using the numbers. I will show you. Then you indicate it using the numbers of against their names as superscripts, so that we know that if I'm reading this person, this is their affiliation. They come from this institution. That is why they have number 3 against their name, which means they come from institution number 3. Okay. Then we of course in the affiliation we give what we call the current address where the author can be found at the time of the publication. Then all this, sometimes emails. Who is a corresponding author, and must the corresponding author always be the first author? Your opinion here? Who is a corresponding author, and must a corresponding author always be the first author in the paper? Hello? Anybody wants to give their opinion?
Corresponding author is the one who takes responsibility for communicating and for purposes of correspondence with the publisher or the journal or whatever outlet, but not necessarily the first author, because sometimes it is research generated outside of, say, a PhD dissertation. The corresponding author could be the professor because of the experience and the ease with which they can communicate and also address the deadlines and other requirements.
Thank you. I think one thing that you have cleared for us is that they don't have necessarily to be the first. Anybody have seen Genevieve? And then
why can't we give opportunities for students to also get used to be corresponding authors? I think that would give them experience as well.
The reason is simple. Oh, sorry.
No, Genevieve, go ahead.
No, well, what I wanted to answer has been answered by my colleague, but I want now to add to the question that is being asked. The reason is very simple, because when you are a student, sometimes
we lost you
not
somewhere.
know those journals, and you are published with them before. The professor, sorry, I'm saying, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I am saying the answer I wanted to give when I put up my hand the first time has already been given. But what I'm answering now is the second question of why the student cannot be allowed. It's not that the student can't be allowed. It's just that the professor may have published before and they have contacts with those journals and those authors. So they are carrying you along with them. They could introduce you in the process, because as a student, you don't know yet. You haven't created a network yet of publishers whom you can deal with. So the student definitely can be given that opportunity, but not the very first time, because the first time the professor is actually carrying you along and they are introducing you to those particular houses. In fact, in future, you can even publish alone without the professor, but at least you will have been introduced and nurtured into that publishing culture by the professor. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Yes, I agree, but also I understand his concern, because he's saying, okay, it's part of the training. I think one of the parts I've picked in your answer is that fine, it's not a problem, but then they can be introduced at one point just to say, okay, this is how then it happens. So you've now published, so it means that henceforth I'm not going to be a corresponding author. I was just showing you how then this works. I think the main thing is already answered, that they don't necessarily have to be the first author. They can be even author number 7. The most important thing is this person able to communicate, because he's going to be the go-between, is the one who is going to be standing in between the other authors and the journal. So if the journal wants to, if they are sending questions or they are sending comments or all these other things, then it goes through the corresponding author. It is the corresponding author who is going to tell these other authors that, hey, we have received, because some journals will not copy everyone else. They will just deal with the corresponding author, because they don't want dealing with, like, you have 5 authors and you want to send emails to everyone, and maybe everyone will respond differently. So they just want a specific person to deal with. So this is the person who is going to talk to the other authors and tell them, we have review comments. Can we work on them, and then I will return them to the journal. Now, the other thing when we are choosing a corresponding author, one of them is, this is somebody who will see these emails. Sometimes we want to choose a professor, but this professor receives 50 emails in a day, and sometimes he filters them through, because sometimes they receive a lot of emails from other journals asking them to edit for them, asking them to review for them. So sometimes he sees an email from a journal and assumes that those are those many journals that are asking me, but then they don't know that this is the paper you are writing about. So you really need someone who will be able to filter this message, or who does not get too many emails, because it can easily slip through the cracks, and then the journal is waiting for you to respond. You're not responding. They assume that you got their email and just decided to keep quiet. So be careful when you are choosing the corresponding author. This person has to be someone who is proactive and somebody who can be able to see these emails and bring them to the attention of other authors. That is what I wanted to bring to the attention. Then after that, of course, we have the abstract. So the abstract should be able to stand on its own. So the abstract should be able to have a little bit of an introduction or a background, maybe a sentence, then the methods that were used, and then the main results, a discussion, and also an interpretation and a little bit of a conclusion of those results. Now, sometimes we have what we call structured abstracts, and sometimes we have what we call unstructured abstracts. We'll talk about that a little bit, but then structured abstracts is where sometimes you find, like when you're sending your paper, or maybe you want to submit your paper to a conference. So you are told we want structured abstract. So for a structured abstract, you'll write as introduction, a small heading, introduction, and then write a few sentences, 2 or 3 sentences. Then you go to methodology or the problem. So for structured, people reading through are already guided on, this is what is talking about, this is the methodology that was used, these are the main results, and this is the interpretation of those key results. But for one that is not structured, unstructured one is where you're just writing, and then whoever is reading, when they read the sentences, they will know that this sentence is talking about the general methodology that was used. This sentence is talking about the main result. This sentence is they are interpreting the main result. This sentence, so that is how then it works. So check through and see whether the journal requires you to use structured abstracts or unstructured abstracts. And so in the abstracts, we are presenting findings as hard facts. So there's no reference to literature. So I don't expect you in the abstract to start writing Outa et al. 2015. I don't want to see that in the abstract. Then there are no abbreviations in the abstract, and especially those that cannot be explained. So I want you are already in the abstract writing MBR. I don't know what MBR is, because I've not gone to the background to understand what MBR is. So, just try to make it as clear as possible for me. So if it is membrane bioreactor something, I just want to see that. Then there's no reference to tables or figures in the abstract. I don't want in the abstract to see table 3 or table 4 below. No, that is not in the abstract. Here we are presenting these things as hard facts. And also in the abstract, I don't want to see conclusions that are not substantiated in the paper. My mentor calls them political conclusions. So then you did a research on the impact of breastfeeding or breastfeeding frequency on child health, and then your recommendation is something else, or your conclusion is talking about something else about diet and feeding, and I'll be like, how did this even come here? So that's just an example. I'm not going to talk about that. I think I've talked about that clearly. You are going to also read through this just to see writing an effective abstract. So it's always written last, follow the guidelines that are needed, be concise. I think these ones are. Then there's keywords. At the end of the abstract, they are what we call keywords. And I always don't dwell here. If somebody asks me, how do I choose keywords? Do I choose keywords from the title? Am I allowed to pick some words from the title? That's up to you. But I would always recommend, because these keywords mostly are meant that when we are going to put them in these databases, we want these keywords to be able to help us, help your paper pop out when somebody puts in these keywords. So you also don't want to put keywords that will not make your paper be visible. So I always ask people, if you are on Google Scholar, for example, and you are looking for a paper that contains information like the one you are presenting right now, you are trying to publish right now, what keywords would you key in on Google Scholar so that you get a paper that contains the exact information like what you are publishing? Then they will start throwing in certain words. I tell them, yeah, those are the keywords. So when you are looking for keywords, detach yourself from the paper and look at it from the reader's point of view, not the author's point of view. Assume that I'm the reader now and I'm looking for information like the ones contained in this paper. What keywords will I put in that database? If it is PubMed, if it is wherever, what keywords? Then you start thinking, okay, the keywords would be breastfeeding, infant mortality, infant nutrition. Okay, yeah, I think, yeah. So I think you get the gist. So those are the things. So this is where we have structured abstract and unstructured abstract. So a structured abstract is where you see now in this case, we have the background, methods, results, and conclusion. Now, this one is unstructured, but it still also has all the sections, okay? This is the background of the study. This gives us now, explain the previous research and also pointing out to the limitations of the methods and also the knowledge gap. Then it gives us the main results, and then the major findings are here and the implications and significance of the study. So what I want us to get from this is that when you are told to write a structured abstract, it still contains the exact question, the exact aspects like the unstructured one, except that in the structured version, you have those sections written out very clearly. Now, each journal will tell you whether they want a structured one or unstructured. I'm bringing it up because sometimes you will see a journal asking you for a structured abstract and you'll be like, what is structured abstract? I know an abstract is an abstract. So this is what it means when it is structured. Yeah, keywords we talked about. Now, after that, now we get into the introduction of the paper. Okay, the introduction. Now, I want to bring it to the social context so that we get to understand. You have been dating someone for some time now. You're the one who knows them. So in this case, you're the one who knows this paper. You want to introduce it to us. We've not even known anything. You are the one who knows what you did, why you did it. But then you want to introduce it to us. I want you to tell me, one gentleman and one lady, if you are going to introduce someone you've been dating, you are going to introduce them to your family, you are going to introduce them to your father or your brothers. What information do you think you need to give these people? And what questions do you think this will ask you? I want us to bring it to the social context first. You've been dating someone for some time. You are now going to introduce them to your family members. What information are you going to give your family members about this person? Because you are the one who knows them, that will make them interested in this person. And what questions do you think they will ask you? A gentleman and a lady. Let's bring it the social context first.
I would say the gentleman is tall, dark, and handsome. He's a farmer, or he's a doctor, or a physician. Where he comes from, whether he has parents and other siblings, and maybe some of the qualities that made me choose him. Thank you.
Oh, I liked the tall, dark, and handsome part. But anyway. I think, yeah, you see the information, because you are the one who knows this person. We don't know them. That's why you brought them home. So we want to know what is their background. Where you say part of it is, why do I like him? You know, he's a kind person. I met him at a conference. He comes from game. People who come from game are genetically enhanced human beings, like myself. So he comes from game. I met him at a conference. I think we've dated for 10 years. You know, we've dated for 17 years, so we want to settle down in marriage. I like him because I think he's a kind guy, all those things. He does this for a living, all those things. So that people get to understand this person better before they commit, whether they want to encourage you to go ahead or they want to ask more questions because they're interested in this person or not. You can give a very clumsy kind of introduction that this will just say, we don't even want to, we are not interested in knowing this guy. You telling us you don't even know. You know, they will ask you, where does he work? You say, I just met him in town. I don't know. He tells me he's a hustler. Then they will be like, you don't even know this guy. And you want us to be interested? You're on your own. We are not interested in this guy because you don't know him. So I also want a gentleman. You are introducing a lady to your people. what information do you give them, and what do you think they will be interested in knowing? A gentleman. Yes, Lillian, I agree. Any gentleman who also wants to, what information, apart from, of course, what has, let's get it from the gentleman's point of view, because I want us to bring it home so that when you are going to write an introduction to a paper, you will apply the same logic because you already know what questions this people will be asking, all those things. Yes, anybody, any gentleman, there are so many gentlemen here, sure. The ladies cannot be introducing us, saying, don't dark and handsome, and then you want to, I don't know people who are light-skinned like myself. Okay. Anybody, any gentleman?
Hello? May you repeat the question, please, again?
Okay. Is there anybody who understood the question? It's a long story that I started building from far, so it will be difficult to get the context.
Sorry,
anybody? Okay, the gentleman have failed to introduce this lady to someone.
Can a lady continue?
Yes, why not? The gentleman have failed.
Okay, can I give my point?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think it will come up in two ways, right?
Yes.
There's an argument that will come from the lady's side. That will say tall, dark, handsome, whatever. But I think from the other side, the question will be, I think the question will be from the other side, where does he come from? What family? You know. I don't know if I can be heard.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yes. So from the lady, it is her perception. It's what she's seeing in this person.
Yeah.
That might not necessarily be what the family is looking at. So the family could probably be saying, you know what, where is he from? You know, is he from a well-renowned this and the other? So there's always, you need to have a clarity of what you want in this person, and it has to reflect to what your family wants. That is why in some instances, some people are rejected. You'll be rejected because maybe you don't fit the profile. Yeah.
I like that because we are bringing this to the context of a paper. I always like it that way because so that whenever you are reading a paper or you are reviewing or you are writing a paper, you are alive to the fact that did I provide the background that people could be interested in? Am I just being, am I just centering on what I think without thinking of what my readers would be focusing on? You know, do I give them enough context? I'm seeing Genevieve also wants to give a point before we move on. Yes, Genevieve, and I'm also seeing Dr. Warder. So let's start with Genevieve and then Dr. Warder, the last one.
I was just going to add to what has been said about profile. You know, families look at the continuity of their line and issues of consanguinity. They do not want to engage in relationships that are incest, for instance. So part of the profile would be, does he come from a clan where we are not supposed to be married with because we are related?
Yeah, I think that's important because then we also don't want to accept, and then tomorrow we realize we are cousins, or we don't want to accept, and then you will say you already accepted, so you cannot come here and tell me I cannot marry this guy. But then you tell them, yeah, we didn't know this, but then you didn't tell us. We didn't know because you didn't tell us. Then you say you didn't ask. No, but we are not supposed to ask. You are supposed to tell us. This is obvious. Then we are in a back and forth that will not end anywhere. Yes, Dr. Warder.
Yeah, let me
There's some echo on your end.
Icon. Yes, I just want to. I can still hear my echo.
Yeah.
Hello, am I clear?
The echo is I don't know whether you are logged in on two devices.
No, but I think somebody else has their work on.
Okay.
Maybe the mic.
Okay, just go ahead. I can try to hear.
Okay, what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that, yeah, let me just ask on behalf of my male colleagues when you asked about how they will introduce a lady to the people, because I happen to have boys who they're in their 20s. So I'm thinking if my boy is introducing what I will want to hear about the girl he's introducing, I think it's the family background. Yes, her qualities as somebody who can be a good wife at home, and her educational background and her beliefs also. What does she believe in? Their common interest, because as couples, you know, they have to have common interest so that it's a long journey. They have to have things which bind them, like maybe friendship, hobbies, workplace, like I guess having something in common. And then after that, he should, like, the man should be really able to convince us what draw him to the lady, so that you see if it's real love or it's a physical attraction or it's just other things and the long-term relationship. Okay, I submit.
Yeah, thank you for coming through for the boy child. You know, the men refused to tell us anything here, so there's no problem. Thank you. I think one thing we are agreeing is that we need to give enough information. We need to give enough context. And let's say if today let's say if today I come here and tell you that we have. There's a car out there. Let's say this was a physical training. I'm just giving an example. So I tell you, okay, I walk in. Let's say we were with you yesterday. I trained you yesterday, and today I'm coming in to tell you that there's a car out there. There's a bus out there. I want everyone to get out and get onto that bus. We are going to town. What questions will you ask me? Just one person. What questions will you ask? I've just come in to tell you there's a bus out there. Everyone is boarding that bus. We are going to town.
Yeah. Why? Why do you want us to board?
Yeah, why are we boarding the car? Going to town to do what?
Yes.
Why did you tell us yesterday? I didn't dress for town. I didn't know somebody was going to see me out there in Nairobi town. So you didn't tell us. You needed to have told us for how long are we going to take there? All those things. So the background of your study, basically, as we said in the proposal on the other side, on this side, the background is where you are combining all that was in the other side. The other side, you have a section for background, you have a section for research, for your methodology. No, you have a section for your background, you have a section for your statement of the problem, justification, the significance, the knowledge gap, all those things. When you are writing a manuscript, you have to combine all that in the introductory part of your research, of your paper. So in the introduction is where you are going to tell us, you start by orienting us you start by giving us the bigger picture. So if it's about fish diseases, you need to tell us what aquaculture is now struggling with, the level of fish consumption and production at the global stage. Then you start talking about fish diseases and the havoc that fish diseases are wreaking in the aquaculture sector, and how then that is leading to losses. And then you tell us what is being done, the interventions that have been done, and then you now tell us the gaps that are there that this research was trying to fill, and that is why the data was collected, that is trying to justify, and then the significance of this. Now, the data that is presented in this paper will help inform A, B, C, D, and then at the end of the introduction is where you're going to write, the main aim of this paper, therefore, was to do this and that, so that it's very clear where you are coming from. So that is how the introduction should flow. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we have also consumed quite a bit of some time, but then I think we get the gist of this. So the introduction introduces the topic, it gives us the arrangement and also the background of the study. I will not read all these things. This is part of what I've talked about. So the research gap, the research question, the significance of the study, the objectives of the study, and also the structure of the article. So when you're writing your introduction, we will read a little bit of just an example of some of those. But then we need, in the introduction, we need to start broadly in your field and then focus very fast. You start broadly and then you come very fast to the actual problem you're dealing with. So if you are dealing with teenage pregnancy, then start by giving us teenage pregnancy at the global stage. Give us some statistics that are supported by some data, some citations. Then now come to the local context within where you are going to solve the problem and tell us what the problem is, the knowledge gaps that are there, whatever is still not known, or the methodological failures that have been there. And then tell us the main objective why you collected this data. And then maybe some good writers will even hint to the general answer to the big question they asked themselves at the beginning before they now start giving you the other details within the paper. I'm not going to read all this. This is part of what I've talked about. And also you are going to get all this presentation, so you still will. Now, the advice when people are writing papers, I always advise them, do not write this section first. When you start by writing this section, it is one of the most difficult parts of the paper to write, because you are trying to introduce everything else in the paper. So imagine if you start by introducing what you've not even written. So you could be introducing something that you still don't understand very well. So I always tell people, write the other parts. I will show you where to start and where to go to, but write the other parts so that when you are writing the introduction, you know what you are introducing. Get to know your paper. It's like you are trying to introduce to us somebody you met yesterday. So we are asking you questions and you are asking them, and you are the one who has come to introduce them to us. So make sure you understand your paper very well so that when you are introducing it later on, you know what information to give us. You don't want to come there and you are seated with that lady and then you ask, what is her name? And you say, I only know her as Joy. Where did you meet Joy? Then you say, Joy, was it in Lubumbashi? No. It was in Accra. Yeah, it was in Accra, yes. So these people will clearly know that you don't know this person. You can't introduce them. You didn't spend time enough to understand them in a way that you can introduce them. So for the paper as well, I don't want you to start by writing this, because then procrastination will kick in, because you have to look for literature, and then you might end up writing this section. And then after writing the entire paper, you go back to the introduction and realize, I didn't introduce this paper very well. I didn't introduce the content very well, so I need to redo this section. So you are going back to do the work that you could have just saved for last, and then you could have just done it once. Okay? So describe your research objectives clearly and simply if you want your readers to be interested in your work. So the main purpose of the introduction are to state the research problem clearly, establish, provide justification for your work, state the methods and results briefly, and sometimes also state the major conclusions. I know here is where people are going to ask questions that why do I state the methods and results in the introduction section? I have read very good writers. I still am also moving towards that. But then you find a writer that in the introduction, they don't write a lot of things. You will find a one sentence saying that this research, therefore, utilized a cross-sectional study, to investigate this and that. So already they have hinted. They have not given you details of the methodology. There's a section they are going to write it. But in the introduction, they have given you a hint to everything in that paper. Everything. They have given you a hint. They have given you a hint of answering the major question they are asking, that the results has revealed that indeed there's a correlation between this and this. So they will give you a hint to every single aspect of that paper without giving too much detail. Okay? The summary: convince your reader your work is important, provide enough background information, provide rationale for your study, state briefly and clearly where you wrote the paper. So the idea is to start broadly within your field and then focus on your, then quickly focus on your specific research problem. So we don't want you to dwell so much on broader aspect, okay? So what I want is that you focus on, you can give us the broader context, so that we get to understand what we get to understand where you are coming from. So you don't want us to, let's say you are doing a study on a specific thing in a specific locality in Nigeria. We don't want you to just go and start talking to us about Ibadan directly. This problem is in Ibadan, yes, but where did we come? How did we even just get to Ibadan like that? So start broadly by telling us what the problem is at a global scope, for example, then tell us in Africa, for example, this is what is happening. And Within West Africa, this is what is happening. Give a bit of examples and even statistics if they're there. All those things. Okay, so it forms the launching pad of the paper, and the writer should start with a hook to interest the reader. So I think these are things I've talked about. When we share this, then you can. These are some YouTube pages that you can view just to see what is there. You can watch this later on. They are very nice places talking about how to write the introduction, all these things. Then now. Materials and methods. After the introduction, always we have the materials and methods. So basically, this is you are going to answer the questions on how. So how was the work done? The methodology, the approach, all those things. And as I said, it depends a lot on the kind of study you are doing. So if it's a cross-sectional study, or it's a longitudinal study, it's an experiment, it's all those things. So this section depends on what kind of study you are doing. But then also, you have to make sure that you give enough context. Okay, you have to give enough context. You have to give enough details so that when I look at your work and I'm reading it, because what happens is when I'm going to see your results, I will come back to your methods, and I will keep asking myself, the result this person is presenting in this paper, could they have been obtained based on the methods they narrated? So if I start doubting that, then I will start asking you where you got these results from. If I'm getting results on growth parameters, for example, but then in your methodology, there is nowhere you described how you are going to measure fish growth, then we'll ask, fine, you are giving me a very nice graph, but where did this graph come from? Because you didn't tell me how you are going to measure fish growth. You didn't tell me how you are going to calculate food conversion ratio, for example. So you didn't tell me, but you are reporting them. So make sure that the methods you are describing will give you the results you are going to report, or the results you are reporting. Now, also make sure that your results section, your methods flow in a certain chronology, so that when I look at the results will also follow that chronology. So I want method 1 should give me result 1. Method 2 should give me result 2. We are going to talk about that in the result section. I'm just preempting so that when you are writing your methods, it has to be clear in your head that, okay, I'm describing how I got this result. So I collected data on this, I analyzed them this way, I did this. So that when you are reporting for me the results, I will be looking at those results against the methods. So if I doubt that these results could be obtained out of the methods you are describing, then I will start asking questions. I will ask you, well, maybe you just cooked the results, because then I don't know how you obtained them. Now, it should enable the readers to repeat your work for verification. So it is the cornerstone of science, and it also helps us judge the adequacy of the methods and the reliability of the results. So if I doubt that the methods are adequate, and also that will also make me start doubting the reliability of the results that you are presenting. So give enough details. And the problem is sometimes, as a researcher, you are too close to these methods that you think a lot of things are obvious. It's not for everyone. Okay. So I'm not going to read all those details again. Now, the materials and methods here is, again, as I said, they are closely scrutinized. If the reviewer doubts that the experiments are repeatable, the manuscript will be rejected, no matter how wonderful the results are. So try to give us enough detail, try to give us enough context, so that when I read your work, I will be like, okay, if somebody got the same resources as what they have now, what this person had, then yeah, they will be able to repeat the work. Somebody will be able to repeat the work. Now, these are so many other things that I also don't want to go into. So the order of information, clustered by a certain principle, use simple past tense to describe what you did, use active and passive voices to enhance clarity in certain cases, use syntax carefully. The example down here is, after standing in hot water for an hour, the flasks were examined. What question will you ask yourself? This is dangling participle. So if you find that in the methodology section, they are writing that after standing in hot water for an hour, the flasks were examined. What questions will you ask here if you're a reviewer? If you are reviewing a paper and in one of their methods they are saying that after standing for 1 hour, in hot after standing in hot water for an hour, the flasks were examined. What question will you ask yourself here? What is not clear?
Who examined? How was it examined? What was the outcome of the examination?
Yeah, the outcome might come in the results, but then as you're saying, how are they examined, for example? But then there's a very critical thing that is not clear here. So what was standing in hot water for an hour? Is it the researcher that was standing in hot water for an hour and then the flasks were examined after that? Or are they the flasks that were standing in hot water for 1 hour before being examined? So, these are the things that we need to be clear about. And also, if you asked, what aspect of this flask were examined exactly? So now, sometimes you have mixed methods research. Methods can be anything, okay? So when you are talking about this, in the methods, we need just to be clear, how are the data collected? What kind of data was collected? So if it was quantitative, what kind of data, quantitative data was collected, and how was it collected? If it is qualitative, the same thing. If we are also going to do data analysis, for example, if we did data analysis, how was data analysis done? The triangulation, all those things, the research design, the qualitative part, for example, how are all these things done, so that it's very clear to us. There's what we call piloting and or pre-testing. Like when you have a tool, let's say you have developed a tool or a protocol that you are going to use for data analysis, data collection, and then you do pre-testing or you do piloting. What is it and how should it be done? Somebody just give us an idea. Hello? What is piloting or pre-testing? Let's say in the context of social sciences, like a qualitative study or maybe quantitative, but then we are doing piloting or pre-testing of a tool. What is it and why is it important and how should it be done?
I think it's to help us check whether the questionnaire will meet the expectations of the data you want to collect.
So how many should we do? What percentage? And should we do it in the same area where we are going to do the research or in a different area? And how do we handle the results of this pilot?
You look for a similar what? If I'm in a hospital, then I can check a hospital B with an outpatient that is similar to where I'll carry out the research, and should be 10% of my population.
Thank you. You have these are some of the small questions that sometimes people struggle with. Doing piloting, how should I go about it? Should I do it so look for a similar setting. They might not be identical. I think I like the fact that you said similar. So they might not be actually identical, but then they could be similar settings. Then do at least 10%. That is what people say. I don't know, but then they always recommend that if you wanted to do 1,000 questionnaires or 1,000 interviews, try to do at least 100 plus. Then you go ahead and analyze this data. Just subject it to the same analysis you are going to subject your actual data to, so that you can be able to know that when I'm doing analysis, I think this question, the way it is coming out from the analysis, I think I either need to change this question, replace it completely, or just remove it because it's not giving any information. It's not helping me in triangulation. It's not helping me understanding anything. So I don't know why it is even here. So you are doing this pre-testing so that you get to understand if there are any adjustments you need to make and be sure that your tool is going to serve the purpose. When I was setting up my experiments, I was setting up an aquaponics system. So aquaponics system is where we have fish in a tank, you feed them, then the waste moves through a biofiltration unit and also a physical filtration unit. Then this water flows through the pipes where I planted crops. Then the crops will take up the nutrients and grow, and then this water is then pumped back to the water tank, and it's just a closed system like that. When I first stocked my fish, I stocked my fish first, and the ammonia had not really stabilized because I needed to allow time for the biofilters to get enough bacteria there, all those things. It's just, those things. So I stocked my fish, and then I lost 60% of the fish, and the plants were also not doing so well. So if I had put that into my data, then I could have gotten very wrong impression about. But then when I ran that cycle and then collected that data the way it was noisy, then I sat down and figured out that, okay, now I think the system is now mature enough. I now know how to regulate flow. I now know how to regulate this feeding. I know how to do sampling in a better way that now is not also going to kill all those things. Or when I see ammonia getting to this level, then I need to adjust this. I need to replace the water by this percentage, all those things. So sometimes it's not just even about just the kind of this, like the survey or the qualitative and quantitative kind of study, but also even for experimental kind of study, you want to run the first experiment or two just to be sure that you get the hang of it, so that when you do the actual data collection, you are not going to have a lot of problems. I always tell people, this is the materials and methods section is the place to start. So start by writing your materials and methods section, because it's the easiest place to write. So start from known towards the unknown. So what you know is you have the materials and methods, you have the results, because that is why you are writing the paper anyway. If you didn't have the results, why are you writing this paper? So write the materials and methods because you're just narrating what you did. Okay? Then write the results because you have them. Then discuss those results. And then now you can come back to the other parts. So we are going there. So in some cases where you are writing your materials and methods, you need to talk about the target population, justify why you are doing your research in a specific area and not another one. Why is it that you chose to do it in Sierra County and not in Bomet County, for example? How many people are you targeting? How did you calculate the population or the sample size, and why? How many questionnaires are you going to administer, for example? If you are going to do an experiment, why did you choose a specific methodology? Sometimes it's good to justify. Now, if you are going to follow certain protocols in your methodology, sometimes don't narrate the protocol word by word, like 55 milligrams of ammonium sulfate was dissolved in water, 21% of that was added. No, if you are going to analyze a certain thing based on a certain protocol, just say water quality analysis were done according to this protocol, and then you cite it very clearly so that somebody who wants to get all the details of that protocol, then they can easily just follow it and see. Now, when you are doing some of this data collection, and especially in the natural resources, so natural sciences, so maybe you are doing sampling in a lake or in a river or in a forest, for example, then sometimes they also want you to give details on georeferences, the coordinates, give a map, or sampling size, and justify why those sampling size. So just give enough details, okay? These ones are just most of the things I've talked about. When to write, you start we always advise that you start with the materials and methods, because this is something you're just narrating how you collected that data, okay? So this should not be a very difficult thing. And also it's good to start writing it when these collaborators are still around, so that if you did a modification to a methodology and you forgot about it, you can always ask them, you remember the last time we went to the lake? Yes. You remember we were trying to measure the flow rate of River Nyando into Lake Victoria? Yes. How did we modify the propellers? Because they were not working very well. So that when the results come, that modification can easily be put into consideration because you still remember. Now, the results, this is where everything is, okay? This is the key part, because this is why you are writing. You have results, you did research and you have results. If you didn't have results, then you would not have no business writing for us anything. So that's why I'm telling you that this is where everything is. It must be logical, easy to follow, and correct. So just make sure that the methodology section, the other side, follows, the results section here follows the methodology section, the other side. You understand? So the methodology section, the other side, was method 1, gave us result 1. So I'm seeing this method, and then it is giving me this result. I'm seeing this method, it is giving me this result. Okay? So basically, that is what I want to see. So if I'm seeing a result and I cannot trace the method that gave us that result, then I will start asking questions. Yeah, how did you come up with this result that you are presenting here? Because there is nowhere in your methodology where you described it. Again, if you have a table, if you have a figure, it must be referred to. If you have an equation, you must refer to it in your writing when you are narrating your results. So if you have a table, table 1, table 2, and you are just writing without telling us, without mentioning the table, then I will be asking myself, why is this table in this manuscript? Because you have not talked about it. It's neglected. Okay? So when you are presenting the results, start by presenting the bigger picture first, because there's that big question you are asking yourself. I know there's a lot of other nitty-gritties that you want to present. There are a lot of details, but I want to start seeing, the biggest question you are asking yourself is there a correlation between this and that? Start by presenting that indeed the results have shown that there's a correlation between this and that. Okay? And maybe if there are significant differences or not. And then now go into now giving us all the other details. Okay? Then the other thing, I think I'm not going to talk about these ones. I think I've talked about. You can arrange them in subsections, and these subsections should follow the chronological order in which your results, your methodology section followed. Use tables and figures. I think we know this, that not all data is presented in words. So you can also present in words. There's no problem in text, but then use tables and figures appropriately. Now, when you have results in a figure, if you present something in figures, don't repeat the entire thing again in words, because sometimes you find students, they have a whole paragraph describing, putting all the results, all the details, including significant differences, everything, and then you have they're taking you to table 3. When you go to table 3 has the exact results that they have already described. So you ask, why were you going through all the pains of describing all these things, and then you again just come to bring it to my attention that it's in a table. So you've summarized. The table is supposed to help you summarize everything. So if I'm still going to look at that table, you could have just put in the key results and then directly me to table 3. So you'd say there's a significant difference between this and that, and the highest and the lowest values recorded were this and that. And then you say the rest of you point me to table 3 and say the other details as described in table 3 below. Then I now go to table 3 and see, okay, you've talked about the highest and the lowest, you've talked about where there are significant differences, but then now I can see all the other details in this table. Or if it's a figure, yeah. So then make sure that mostly we encourage that you write this after the materials and methods. So do materials and methods and then write this. Now, I'm not going to write all those things. Those are just details. So for a table, the caption comes on top of the table. For a figure, the caption goes below the figure. Okay? For a table, the caption comes on top of the table. For a figure, the caption goes below the figure. Now, for a figure, you see, you need to label the axis. We want to see what is in the x-axis, what is in the y-axis. If you have different graphs, just give us a legend so that we know that this kind of line is about this. This kind of line is about this treatment, for example. So it's good to make it as clear as possible so that when I'm reading your figure, I know. Okay. Yeah, I'm also not going to read through this summary. I think I've talked about it a little bit also. So yeah. The discussion. Oh, sorry. After the results, we have the discussion. Now, the discussion is where you are going to interpret the result. So this is just an interpretation. So this is where you tell us what the results mean. So if you find that there was no difference, or there was a significant difference between certain things, then you need to tell us why one scored better than the other, or why there are no significant differences, and then you tell us what other people have found and compare whether they agree or they differ. And if they differ, why do you think they differ? All those things. So that is why the discussion section is a very important section, because this is where we start looking at you as a researcher and trying to see, do you even understand what those results mean? So most rejections are due to faulty discussions. You could have very good results, but if you interpret them wrongly, then I will just say this guy does not understand what results mean. So that's why I'm rejecting this paper. Okay, so you just need to restate the key findings. So when you are starting your discussion, I want you to remind me of the key findings, just 1 or 2 lines, and then now start interpreting them, compare with the previous research, and then if there are limitations, for example. So you did research, and you are doing a cross-sectional study that was taking maybe 4 years. You are trying to follow certain patients on how then they react to certain drugs, and you recruited them into the study, and you recruited 100 patients, and 10 of them dropped out for whatever reason. Some of them maybe succumbed, some of them just dropped out for whatever reason. So you are reporting results of 90 patients, But then in the beginning, you started with 100 patients. In the discussion section is where you are going to tell us what were some of these things and how did you deal with them? How did they influence or how did they affect the results that you are reporting to us? So you could tell us, okay, in the course of the study, we lost 75 of these people, so we ended up having 225. And this is how we compensated for that problem, and this is how they affected the results, all those things. So this is where you are interpreting. But I also want you to be a prudent scholar. So if you find that your results also disagree, because most of the time you will find people writing and they just keep saying, this results confirm or this results agree with the Outa et al. 2015. There is nowhere they are saying that these results differ, because they are afraid of giving reasons why there is a difference. So where the results differ, just come out clearly and say the results, however, differ with the results reported by so-and-so doing the same or doing similar studies in another place, and then try to justify why you think the results differ, okay? So when you are doing your when you are doing your discussion, it's the opposite of the introduction. So in the introduction, you start broadly, then you narrow and focus. It's like a funnel. But the discussion is an inverted funnel. The discussion is where we are starting narrow with the current results, and then we progress now. We broaden it by comparing with the results that have been obtained by other people. Okay? So we start from specific and progress to a more general discussion. So note that the direction is opposite from that in the introduction. Okay, this is also maybe the place to confront potential critics. So if somebody was going to ask you that, okay, how did you deal with the loss of certain subjects in the study? Then in the discussion is where you are going to talk about how that happened. Okay, one example is start the first paragraph with the key results and what they mean. Paragraph 2, how do these findings relate to results of previous work? So in the discussion also, try to structure your discussion to follow the results. So you remember the methodology, the results will follow. We start with methodology, then we follow with the results, when we follow with the discussion. So I want you, when you are discussing your results, I want you to discuss result 1, result 2 in that order, so that it's clear for me that, okay, the interpretation this guy is giving is now interpreting the result on this. The second interpretation I'm seeing is the result on this. The third interpretation, so interpret each. So interpret one result, tell us what it means, and then compare with what other people found. Go to the second result, interpret it, tell us what it means, compare with what others did, and if there are limitations or also maybe any other thing, then you can also throw it in there. So go in that order so that it's not jumbled up, okay? Then paragraph 3 could be potential drawbacks and their solutions, and paragraph 4 should be summary of results and conclusions, and in some cases, some journals will require you to do this results and summary of results, which is maybe just basically conclusions and recommendations in a different section of the paper, a distinct section that is just talking about results and discussion, so that you don't mix it in the discussion section. These ones you can read. I really don't want to go there. These are just other do's and don'ts when to write towards the end. It may be written together. There are some journals that will tell you to combine results and discussion in one section. Some journals will tell you that we want you to present the results separately and discussion separately. You understand? So, but now go and check what the journal requires. That's why you need to check what the journal requires. If the journal requires you to combine the results and discussion section as one section, then go and combine them, so that you write a result, interpret it, and then compare with other people. Then go to the next one. Write that result, interpret it, and compare. If the journal requires you to combine the results and discussion section as one section, but if they require you to put results separately and discussion separately, don't combine them. In the results section, just describe the results. Do not try to interpret them. Just describe them and leave it there. Don't interpret and say this means or no. Just give us, these are the results, that is what we want. Okay, so that is it. Then acknowledgements at the end of the discussion. Of course, sometimes after the discussion, then you go to results and you go to the conclusions and recommendations, and then you go to the acknowledgement. Acknowledgement, of course, is where you thank people, and you don't wish to thank, just thank them. Yeah, I've seen quite a bit. We would like to, we wish to. No, don't wish. Just say we are grateful, or we appreciate the support. If it was funded or done or funded by someone, and also give reasons why someone is being thanked. You could be thanking an institution or an individual or a funder or a donor. Give reasons why they are being put in the acknowledgement. Also, sometimes some of them will require you to even show the wordings of the acknowledgement. I'm giving an example of a case where people are working on a project and they disagreed, and one professor does not even want anything to do with that project anymore, and you have acknowledged them in a journal, in a paper, and you've not told them. So then the paper gets published, they read it, and then they tell you, who told you to put my name in that paper? I left that project long time ago. Then they now start having problems. They can even write to the journal to pull down that paper. It could be a very nice paper. So sometimes it's a good thing to just tell people, hey, we are acknowledging your institution for the support you gave us during our study, and this is the wording of the acknowledgement. Are you okay with it? Is there something we need to change? Then they will tell you, okay, instead of saying this, say this, because this is the kind of support we think we provided, not what we are talking about. So we appreciate you are acknowledging us, but so I hope you understand what I'm saying. So don't wish to thank, simply just thank. Okay. Then appendices, sometimes you provide sometimes you're provided, you're told to give program code, statistical details, or extra data, or sometimes you need to annex maybe digital tools. So maybe you are not digital tools, but data collection tools. So sometimes you use key informative review guides, or you used certain protocols, or you used certain a questionnaire. So you want also to annex that questionnaire so that whoever is reviewing your work will understand how the questionnaire, if the questionnaire had certain flaws, then it's very easy for them to pick out and say, okay, I understand now why your results are not very strong, because the questionnaire really did not have questions that would really address whatever it is that you wanted to address. So sometimes some journals will ask you for that. Then, of course, we have the references. We talked about this. Anything that was cited in text must. All the in-text citations must be converted into references. Okay? And then all these things, the other things that I want to now talk about before we get a plenary is about journal selection. So how do you select a journal for your paper? Then there are what we call predatory journals. I want to talk about it a little bit, and then we will go back to journal selection. Predatory journals are these journals that do not follow the ethics of scientific publishing. So they don't conduct review work. They don't, they are just in this for money. Of course, I think it's journals are in this for money. They publish and they charge article processing fee or article processing charges to, so there's no problem. I'm not saying that all journals that charge article processing charges are predatory. No, most of them are not. But there are those that will, if you send a paper today, and then tomorrow you are told your paper has been accepted, no one has asked you any question, no one has reviewed anything, then you just tell them, okay, I'm not going to publish that paper with you, because then there's nothing you did. So just know that you are dealing with a predatory journal. Sometimes they also do what we call, they solicit. You find emails, people asking you to submit papers there, you don't even recognize them. So these are the problems. So there's lack of peer review. These are the characteristics: lack of peer review, aggressive solicitation. Sometimes some of them have very high publication fees. Some of them have very low publication fees. Then they also have misleading metrics. So sometimes you find they are saying they have an H index of, or they have, how do we call it? Impact factor of 7.8. Then you realize according to whom? So they are just giving their own things, okay? Then also there's poor quality control. So they try to publish articles without rigorous scientific standards. So you submit a paper today, tomorrow it is accepted. Or you submit a paper, they take 2 weeks or 1 week just trying to buy time. And then at the end of the day, they will tell you your paper being accepted, send us money. Or some of them will tell you that we are not going to tell you how much we are going to charge until your paper is accepted. You see, they are trying to box you. So you ask them, how much do you charge as an article processing charge? And they will tell you, okay, just submit your paper. Once the paper is accepted, then they will tell you how much to pay. Why are they not forthright? What are they hiding? Okay, so these are the things that you need to look out for, because then you might end up sending a very good information or very good data to a journal that is predatory, and then now that is not counted as a publication. It will just, you would have just thrown some very good data into. So I think you will read through how then do you avoid predatory journals. So you can establish, you can also, there are several journals, there are several sites that can help you identify. And one of them is Think, Check, Submit. If you just type that on Google, you will find a platform where you can easily, when you have a journal, you can easily think. There are several questions that it will ask you about that journal, then you answer them. If there's a threshold of answers, if you have a certain threshold of yes, then you can say this is a good journal. But if you answer no to some of them, a certain number, then you realize you are dealing with a predatory journal, so you need to retreat. Now, how do I identify a journal where I can publish my paper? So I want to publish my paper, but I don't know which journal to publish my paper in. So I want to publish my paper, but I don't know which journal to go to. How do I identify this? One of them is I can rely on the journals or the papers that I cited. So when I'm writing my proposal, or when I was writing my thesis, or when I was writing my paper, I cited certain papers, and those papers were published in certain journals. So that is a good place to start from, because those are the potential journals that can also publish the paper that I'm writing. Okay, that is one. Then the other way that I can identify, I will stop sharing this, and then I just show you how then we can also find journals where we can publish our papers. Is here. I don't know. I'm looking for a journal where. Okay, I will share my screen. We are almost done. I think we have also consumed a bit of some time there, but no problem. I'm just trying to, I just want to show you how then we can select journals for our paper. I've seen someone has raised their hands, no problem. We are coming there. Just a minute so that I just show you something. So I want to show you here how then we can select a journal for our paper. So let's say we want to come here. So just go on to Google and type journal finders. So journal finders, all these houses, most of these renowned publication houses have journal finders. Okay, so okay. So if you want to publish your paper in Elsevier, for example, Elsevier has a journal finder. If you want to publish your papers in Springer, they have their journal finders. Wiley have their journal finders. All these, Tyler and Francis. So these journal finders, even MDPI, Sage, how do we call them? Frontiers, they have journal finders. So let's say we want to publish our paper in Elsevier, for example. Just come and click on journal finder here. So they are going to give you journals that are publishing under Elsevier. So what they will do, they will just give you a place where you just copy and paste your abstract. Then based on that, you will be able to, it will be able to recommend for you certain journals. And then just based on your abstract, you can be able to be linked to journals. And then you can now check out those journals and submit your paper to those journals. The other place that I want you to check out when you are trying to look for journals where to publish your paper is here. So if you are targeting journals that are in the African context, then look for, if that journal is not here, it's called AJO. So it's called African Journals Online. So if you are trying to look for journals that are being published within Africa and they are not indexed in AJO, then you know that you have a problem. So ask them, are you indexed in AJO? If yes, if no, then you start now dealing with them with a lot of caution. Ask them, why are you not indexed in AJO? Then they will give you a lot of excuses. Journals that are publishing in Africa should be indexed in AJO for them to be deemed to have met the criteria that is required. The other place where you can also find good journals, apart from journal finders and AJO, is also directory of open access journals. You can always come here. So DOAJ will give you all open access journals that are legit. See here. Tomorrow we are also going to look for something else, but here you can always find journals based on your specific field of research. So you can, if you want journals that do not charge any fees to publish, you will go, journals without, we have 14,000 journals that do not charge anything to publish a paper for you. So you will come here and just come and search by the name of your field. So your field of research, so if it's agriculture, if it is fisheries, you will come and search there. And then you can come and type the keywords here, and then it will pop out certain journals. Then you can check out those journals. So these are journals without publication fees. So let's say we are in the field of agriculture here. It's going to refine that study. So we are going to have all these journals that are just in the field of agriculture. See, this one is marine and fisheries, because fisheries is still under agriculture, aquatic research, veterinary, all this. Then you can put in keywords here and then talk about. So it's going to try and look for journals that can publish for you a paper in the areas of fish feeds and all this, aquaculture and all that. So you can always come to DOAJ and also just check out what is there. Now, I want to do the last thing before I stop my presentation, and then we have a little bit of some plenary. There's something I want to present here as we finish, so that as I look for it, there's something I want to show you. It will take just a minute. Yeah, this is what I wanted to present. I'm looking for the presentation mode. Okay, here. So the annotated manuscript, I'm not going to do the entire presentation because part of it I've already talked about. I just want to show you how then you prepare your journal, for how you need to prepare before you start your writing. This will take a minute. So I'm not talking about those other things. These are things I've talked about already. So I'm not going to, again, talk about them. I just want to talk about here. So when you want to prepare your work, the first step is to prepare figures and tables. You don't want to stop in the middle of your writing to draw tables, or you are stopping in the middle of your writing to plot graphs and figures. Make sure that before you sit down to start writing, so that it also does not break your train of thought, make sure that at the beginning, when you are, before you start, as you prepare to start writing, make sure you already prepare figures and tables, and you already even have captions ready. So that is the first thing you need to do. Then write the methods, because methods is just describing what you did and how you did it. Then the third one is write the results, because you have the results. That's why you are writing this paper in the first place. Then write the discussion. So this is where you are interpreting the results. And sometimes they are written together, I told you. When the journal requires you to write the results and discussion in one section, then you can now combine them. But if they don't, write the results and then do a discussion, then write a clear conclusion. It is only here that you can now do a compelling introduction, because you now have the methods, you have the results, you have the discussions, and you have a conclusion. So it means that if you are now introducing this paper, you know enough information on how best to introduce it. Then write the abstract, compose a concise and descriptive title, select keywords for indexing, write the acknowledgements, and then write up the references. Basically, this is what I would advise you to do. Thank you. I will stop my presentation here, and then we have a plenary. And as I say, during plenary, I'm not going to answer these questions by myself. We are going to help one another, and I'm going to start with Dr. Outa. If you have something to add, at this point, it's a plenary. So if you have any feedback, it does not really have to be a question. It could be something you want to add or anything you can type in the chat. Dr. Outa, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much, Daktari, for really reviving our knowledge in this area. And it has been very interesting. I'm just concerned when it comes to the discussion of the results, having in mind that the student or the scholar went through a literature review, which mostly support the hypothesis or the prediction of the result. Because when you do a research, you have something in mind that it will be this one or this one. But because it's a scientific research, also you might have different results, which is anomaly. But now when it comes to Africa, when you have anomaly, and then you are backed up by many research, which mostly they are not ours. It is very difficult to defend your anomaly. First of all, because of issues of budget, which are really, our research are not budgeted well. As I worked in the parliament, and I know most of the parliament or most of our budget allocation, they don't give enough to research, especially when it comes to Africa. So most of the scholars or students, we have very bright people who I think could have discovered a lot of things, but because of the literature which is there, and because of the hypothesis which we put and the prediction, and also the supervisors, most of them have gone through this review and they have those concepts, there come a bias towards any anomaly which you might find, and it can be the right one, because that's why I put the question that when you are citing the literature, me, I've been teaching in the uni. So if I continue now to teach, I think I wouldn't let my students to cite from 17th centuries or things like this, because these are outdated data. But given that they're based what those hypotheses are put and the theories, I think as scientists from Africa, we have really to when a scholar or when a student get an anomaly, even if we think it's wrong, let's give it a trial. Maybe it's right, because results sometimes are results, even if you give explanation to the environment, to what. But from my own experience, having my master and my PhD, I think we are always directing the scholars towards a known end of the research, even if the gray area is different, but mostly it is backed up by the literature and the discussion, as you said, because what triggered my discussion of this question is when you said, even if there is something in the discussion which is different, the scholar shouldn't be shy of bringing it. Maybe it can be a gray area for someone else. Okay, say maybe Dr. Nicholas has found that his result wasn't in agreement of those big names, and maybe it can get another person who will be interested in researching why did it differ. And maybe the whole theory of what have been based on this, like the research is based on, is not true. Yes, it's a thinking, because mostly when a research is done, even as a supervisor, you tend to know the end, because you have a lot of literature review, which are not really reviewed or not cross-checked a lot, because they are from old long times. So I think it's just for my colleagues who are here, and especially those who are still very pure research, me, I tend to politics, we have to really pull our socks up and do research, especially when it comes to medicine. We have the outbreak of COVID. Me, I'm from South Sudan. We had a lot of remedies which people were taken, and it helped them. Remember that time people were saying the country was 4 ventilators, but the death toll in South Sudan from COVID was very minimal. Having consume whatever they have consumed, the environment, this alone could have been a research on how, okay, people got infected, but they're alive. Those who died are really very rare, and they have maybe very critical conditions, heart conditions, elderly, things like that. Though this is just, I think as we're still having a time tomorrow, I don't want to consume a lot of times, but I was just reflecting on those things. That from here, I think if there is, I know it's a workshop, but if there is a recommendation, really, we still call for our countries, our institutions to have enough money for our budget allocation towards research, because without proper research, as Africans, we cannot go anywhere when we are adapting only tailor-made research or results from elsewhere where it's not is not even adaptable to our environment, to our genes, to our people, to our economy, to a lot of things. So thank you very much. Let me submit here. I don't know if I made sense, but that was...
I don't know why you're asking whether it made sense. I think you have summarized a lot of things. And I think as you say, you're saying that you know that these are discussions that can take a long time. That's why you are saying that you are trying also not to take too much time. But I think whatever you have given us is food for thought, one. And especially for those who are in academia, you are saying you transition a little bit into politics, but then, of course, politics informs what happens on this other side, because then resources must come from the political side. So the good thing with the researchers going into politics is sometimes when these people are sitting down to talk about research and they want to not to give us money, then you tell them, no, I am from that specific area. If that person has a bankable idea, give them money to go and do research. You never know the breakthroughs they are going to get. That's why it's also good for people who understand what happens in academia and also those who understand what is happening in research to cross over to the other side. Why not? Because some people on that other side are not very bright. Okay, sorry. Some of them are not very bright. So maybe we elect the loudest people, and when you tell them we need money allocated for research, they say, what is research helping us with? We don't care. They don't know that the agriculture and food security they're talking about relies a lot on research and trials, and this requires money. Thank you for that. I think that is one conversation we really need to have. Now, bringing that back into academia, and you said it very clearly, that sometimes a student finds something that their results did not align to what the hypothesis was, or don't align to what is, mainstream in the mainstream part of their research, and they fear that if I report that my results do not align to, I was building on the research of my professor, for example, but if I found different results, this is what is going to be a problem defending before these people. They will start questioning a lot of things. So I can keep this on the side and then just report what I think is right so that I don't get into trouble. That's also there. So I think it's quite a lot of things that we need to think about. But I think thank you for bringing our attention to some of these things, because there are those who are in academia, and then we need to handle some of these things the way they should be. Someone is asking about the steps to doing the preparing for a publication. All that, I think we are going to share this. Everything is going to be shared. The recording plus the actual materials. Each of them is going to be shared to you, so you can also use them in future and read. And also, you can even use them for training other people. Why not? That's why we have open source. So this will be shared, so you will be able to read also from the presentations and part of them that maybe I did not discuss. I would want us to stop here because we have a session tomorrow. We have also sat for quite a long time. We need to stretch as we wait for tomorrow. So tomorrow we are going to talk about quite interesting things. I think tomorrow should be the session you should not miss, because we are going to talk about open access tools that can make your life easier in academia. We are going to talk about research visibility and how do you make your research visible? How do you make your impact as a researcher so that people know what you are doing? What platforms do you need to create accounts on so that your work is visible? Somebody can see your influence and somebody can identify you and see you and partner with you or give you a consultancy. So those are the things we are going to talk about tomorrow. So you don't want to miss our session tomorrow. Kevina, back to you. Close this session for us. If you have any feedback, put it in the chat so that we can improve on tomorrow or any other time that comes. If it is good, just say good. If there are a few things that we also need to panel beat, why not? We can take that to tomorrow. But Kevina, close this session for us as we head to a break and we wait for tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nicholas. I think, first of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for their time and dedication. We've been here since morning. Thank you for joining us. I hope that today's discussions have provided you with practical insights that you are going to apply in your research journey. So we'll continue the second bit of the session tomorrow, as Dr. Nicholas has said. And it's going to be on scientific publishing and open access and scholarly communication. So we're going to meet at the same time, which was 9 a.m. East African time. You can apply that to your own time zone. And then I see some comments in the chat asking about the notes and recordings, that those are going to be shared after the training. I have also shared the attendance list. If you have not input your name for the certificates, kindly do so. I have also shared some resources, including our WhatsApp community link. So if you have some questions or anything you'd like to contribute before the discussion tomorrow, you can do so in the communities. And if you have questions, they're going to be addressed. I'll also add my email to the chat. So in case of any inquiry, feel free to reach out to me. Please input your names in the link that I've shared so that, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. That's all from us. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
And see you tomorrow. I've also included my email in the